initiate chaos theory guarantees that we'll play like lightning shots, sounding like thunder. For every time in the face that it hits us, we're faster. Well, they should know by now. They see the world keeps trying to shake us. It only wakes us. The pendulum swings. The pendulum swings. It's in a beautiful darkness. Only another. It's full steam ahead. Full steam ahead. All about the Betty Express. Misdirected from the start. It's a runaway train. I come a freight train. I come a freight train. In a beautiful darkness, the Betty Express. In a beautiful darkness.
You guys, I do want to get you a little bit of a heads up of what we are going to get. So, the state is going to start out with a penitentiary or the head of the corrections facilities in Texas. But the real star witness this afternoon, and we just got through with a voir dire. It looks like the defense ignored one of Tanner's cousins who is accusing him of SA. The way Tanner brought up this essay that happened to him when he was 10, well, apparently he visited the same evil allegedly upon the cousin, one of his male younger cousins. So I do want you to be mindful of that it's not the first witness, but the next witness that we're going to go into is a family member who tried to tell the defense that he'd been victimized by the defendant, and the defense apparently didn't care about that. So this is looking really terrible for the defense. As and I wondered about the strategy of bringing a correctional institute kind of person on. I do think that the state is noticing that there might be one or two jurors after the defense who are maybe sympathetic to Tanner and his difficulties. What they're using this witness to bring in is that there is no special place in Gen Pop for Tanner to go. He's not gonna get special or segregation, off the bat. He is gonna be in giant dormitories. He's going to be subject to massive changes and, irregularities of schedule. He's not going to have a choice over whether he moves, whether he gets in a dorm, whether he gets in a cell. And according to the defense, he doesn't do well with transitions or changes. So it is very interesting that the state decided to go with this particular gentleman first. But really, we are waiting for this more explosive witness after this gentleman.
All right, everyone may be seated. We are ready to proceed, ladies and gentlemen. This witness has been previously sworn to testify truthfully. Ms. Duke, Mr. Spade? Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Tim, would you introduce yourself to the jury and state where you're currently employed?
Yes, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Timothy Fitzpatrick. I'm employed with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
And what is your position title at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice?
I am the Director of Classification.
And I'm going to get to your CV in a minute, but how many different jobs have you done in the TDCJ system?
I have done numerous jobs. I started off as a correctional officer when I was 18 years old. I have held every correctional security rank, so including sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, assistant warden, and warden at numerous facilities before I was assigned as the Director of Classification.
And when you say Director of Classification,
When did you start? Were you like 12 working at a corrections officer? You look like 35. I mean, no offense, but honestly, did you start working in prisons at 14? I am confused. I very much like how the state is very concrete. I am a logic person. So the defense has spent a lot of time with this ephemeral, like these are his, his strengths and weaknesses, but not so much how this is going to affect him in prison. I very much like the concrete, this is where he's going. These are the challenges that he's going to face. And he's not going to get put away from the other predators. He is going to be prey.
And what are your duties as a director of classification?
Sure. So just at a high level, those duties include and begin with the admission of all convicted felons in the state of Texas. So we have 254 counties in Texas. When someone is convicted of a crime and sentenced to the Texas prison system to serve their sentence, I have a department that begins with receiving all of that documentation from the courts. We review and certify that documentation, and then we schedule them for admittance into our custody. We are then responsible for all the physical admission. So when someone arrives at one of our intake facilities, we conduct intake processing, which is a 30-day comprehensive process that we put them through. We are responsible for all time calculations, so making sure that the intent of the court and what someone is sentenced to is calculated correctly based on all of the court documentation. We assign every inmate that is received to one of our 104 prisons in the state of Texas. So they are spread throughout the entire state, and we have to make decisions on where to best assign those individuals once they get to our custody. Once they're at the facility that they're assigned to, we make decisions on housing, job placement, and things of that nature. We also process all releases at the very end. So essentially, the way I like to describe it is it's incarceration from A to Z. It starts at the very beginning before they even get to us while they're in the county, and it ends the day they go out the door. So we are involved from start to finish.
All right. And in this particular position, does that also include the Polinsky unit or death row in Livingston, Texas?
Yes, sir, it does.
And how long have you been doing this particular director of classification job?
I've been the director of classification for about 4.5 years.
And in this particular capacity, how many people do you manage in this position?
My division particularly has a little over 2,000 employees for the state.
And when we talk about, I'm going to use the term staff, is staff, is that term defined? Is that just prison guards in the TDCJ system, or who is that?
No, sir. We have a wide array of.
I very much like this other sort of reality of of prison, that he is not just going to be interacting with guards. He's going to be interacting with nurses, with doctors who are contracted out, with therapists, with other people. So it's not only about his safety as in regards to other inmates, it's also about these others. We know that Tanner will victimize people that he feels bigger than. What happens if there's a female left alone with him? Again, there are real logistical issues to having him in Gen Pop that I don't think the defense or maybe people who aren't aware of, the prison realities would understand. So I think this is a really good idea for the state to kind of bring reality back into the room.
Public servants who work within our prison system. So it's not just the correctional officers.
All right. So what other kinds of people would be considered as staff in the TDCJ system?
Sure. So we have staff that work, like I said earlier, in the classification and intake departments. Those folks do not wear uniforms like our correctional officers. We have maintenance personnel. We have employees that work in the commissaries. So there is folks, all kinds of support functions that have to operate at prison center.
And in addition to those people that are employed by the TDCJ system, are there other people who work in the system but are not technically TDCJ employees?
Yes, yeah, we have a large base of contract employees. So all of our medical care is conducted by contract personnel. We also have the Wyndham School District that comprise all of our educational services for the prison system as well. So there's a lot of different contract employees that work inside the fence.
And then what about volunteers? Do you have volunteers that participate in the TDCJ system?
Yes, sir. We have about 29,000 or more volunteers that are approved to come into our prisons around the state.
Okay. And as far as the things that they provide, is that things like clergy, teacher, things of that nature? Is that what they provide?
Sure. So a lot of that volunteer base is for religious purposes. So you have different, whether it's a church group or religious organizations that have volunteers that come in. But also you'll see a lot of things like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, anger management courses, things on how to be a better parent, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different organizations that have volunteers that spend their time to come in and try their best to help on that rehabilitation of the population.
Now, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about the classification of people that are in the prison system, as we talked about, and then the difference between people that are in the Valencia unit death row. Okay, so let's start and focus on classification for people that are actually serving an actual sentence. Okay, I'm familiar that there's a G scale that we classify those people on, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to focus on two parts of that, just in the nature of brevity here. What's the difference between a G2 inmate and a G3?
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're serving people that aren't Tanner, that maybe got their first DUI and need to be better parents. So I'm glad that they offer that there. Um, what I am impressed with, as far as this particular witness, is that he started out from the bottom. Now, a lot of times you see people at the top of organizations or things like this who haven't really started out in the trenches. So I actually, respect him more as a boss since he has worked, at every level of the correctional sort of totem pole. So I do find that I would probably take more stock in a lot of his answers if I were on the jury, because he has worked in all the different positions, from top to bottom.
Sure. So just for the jury's understanding, G just stands for general population. And we have a scale, like he mentioned, it goes from G1 to G5. G5 being the worst, G1 being the very best. The vast majority of individuals, when they're received within our custody, they start off as a G2 custody inmate. G2 just means that they're going to be serving less than 50 years in our custody. If they are going to be sentenced to more than 50 years, anything 50 or above, up to and including life without parole, they're going to start as a G3. So they're starting right there in the middle. And then anything above is going to be a behavioral issue. And I believe we get into that a little bit later, or I can cover that now. And then anything below that G1 is going to be reserved for a very select group of nonviolent individuals that work outside the fence.
I want to talk about offenses and potentially some myths here. Is it true that if someone commits a sex crime, that they're segregated from the rest of the prison population? Is that true?
That is not true.
And with regard to an offense involving violent offenses like murder, aggravated assault, weapons offenses, are they similar? Are they housed separately?
They are not housed separately.
So let me give you an example. If an inmate is serving, let's say, a 40-year sentence for murder, and then someone serving a 60-year sentence for a habitual drug offender, what classification would the 40-year sentence get based on the G scale?
That individual would be a G2 if they have a positive, no disciplinary history. They would be a G2.
Walking in the door.
Sure, walking in the door.
And then the person that's a 60-year sentence because they're a habitual drug offender, what are they classified as?
They'll be a G3 walking in the door.
And somebody there for serving life without parole for capital murder, they're going to be what?
They would be a G3.
Okay. The same as our habitual drug offender.
That's correct.
Now, let's talk a little bit about G4 and 5 quickly. G4 and 5, you said that had to do something with behavior. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So as I explained, the G2 and G3 is solely based on the sentence and the charge when they're received. G4 and G5 has nothing to do with their charge or their sentence. It has everything to do with their institutional adjustment. So how are they behaving once they're received into our custody? Are they complying with rules and regulations? Are they listening to the staff? Are they not getting into fights or altercations? All of those higher custodies, the G4 and G5, is based on the behavior of the individual once they're received.
All right. Let's talk about, just for information purposes, let's talk about prison housing. In the TDCJ system, what are the two basic types of housing that inmates in the system, whether they're G2 or G3, that they have? What are the two basic types?
Sure. Two basic types is going to be a cell block environment, which is your typical cell that's going to have two individuals living in sort of a bunk bed environment on top of each other in a cell. The other environment is going to be a dormitory. So surely want to share this, that 51% of the beds in the Texas prison system are a dorm environment. 49% are cells.
So I think that's really important. Again, I think the state is maybe judging that some people are wondering, well, if Tanner isn't maybe fully culpable, maybe they are reading the jury and seeing that some people are having a lot of sympathy for Tanner. Or maybe they're just, maybe this was the strategy all along to show exactly what the prison facility and what prison looks like with the different classifications. I don't know, but it does seem as though maybe they are sensing that there is some sympathy for Tanner. Now, after the next witness, I don't think there will be, but this does seem to have been strategic to kind of show the other side if people are thinking that mercy is a life sentence without parole. Now, if I were prone to sadistic tendencies, nothing could take me off of life without the possibility of parole. I want this man in Gen Pop. I want the appeals to be out of the hands of sniveling academics, such in this. But honest to goodness, I mean, if you are of the variety that would like to see Tanner pay for this, they're making a really good sell for life without the possibility of parole. I know it's cathartic to think that he could get the death penalty, but at this point, I'm like, which one's more expedient and saves the family of Athena? These are probably not good inside facts, but I have logically thought about this, and at this point, I'm I'm kind of okay with him constantly being tormented by loud noises and people bullying him. I think that segregation sounds like good for Tanner. I don't know. I'll probably change my mind again in 2 minutes, though.
Dorms can range anywhere from a small dorm, 8-10 man dormitory, all the way up to about 150 men or women in one dormitory together, essentially in cubicles.
And so, and again, I'm going to stay focused on just our G2 and G3 inmates, just trying to be efficient here.
Sure.
With regard to G2,
What? An attorney in this case trying to be efficient? Oh, that's right. The state is back. The adults are back.
G3 inmates, do they have access to either housing arrangement?
Yes.
And then let's talk about movement around the prison. What I mean is when G2 and G3 inmates are moving about the prison, are they secured in any way, handcuffs, shackles, things of that nature?
No, sir. They walk to wherever they're going to be going.
Okay. Even if they're serving life or capital murder?
That's correct.
Is this the same when they go outside?
Yes, there are instances where we have job assignments where individuals could work outside of the fence under armed supervision, but they are not restrained with hand restraints or leg restraints.
Let me back up. When a G2 or G3 inmate that's not going outside the fence, I'm assuming they go outside at some point.
Recreation and things like that, sure, yes.
And during that time, is our G2, D3 inmates, are they chained or shackled or limited when they go outside?
No, sir.
Let's talk about meals. How does it work for those in either the dorm or the cell block environment? How does it work for them to go to meals?
When it's time for a meal, the living area where they are at are notified for the meal time. They then walk 25 at a time down to the dining hall. Some dining halls hold around 100 individuals. Some hold up to 400 individuals in one dining hall together. So they go in groups of 25, but then once they arrive at the dining hall, it could be a much larger group that's eating together.
And so this is the same whether you're serving 2 years for DWI or life without parole for a capital murder.
That's correct. They would be in there together.
Is that the same for church and medical? Does that work the same for both religious services and medical?
Yes, it does. Same way.
All right. You said something about jobs. Let me ask you, are there inside the fence jobs available for inmates?
Yes, the best way I like to describe this is think of prison like a small city. And so inside of a city, you need every type of job, right? Folks that are going to be.
I nominate Tanner as dodgeball. I think he could, we can't let the inmates have prison or have balls. I mean, what if not everyone got one? But I say we play, kickball and dodgeball with Tanner. Allegedly in Minecraft, of course. But I'm just saying, if a job needs to go, or hacky sack, I mean, I'm okay with him being the prison's hacky sack. We don't give the prison inmates enough recreation. I say we can't trust them with real hacky sacks until they play with Tanner.
Preparing and serving food, folks that are going to be fixing, doing plumbing work or other maintenance type jobs. So there is a vast array of jobs for the prison, for every single prison. And it is our goal to ensure that everyone is being as productive as possible while they're incarcerated. And so we do assign jobs to the fullest extent based on their medical considerations.
Yeah. And so is that, whether or not they have a job or not, is that limited by the type of offense they committed if they're a G2 or G3 inmate?
There is very minimal limitations.
Is it limited by the type of offense as far as violent or nonviolent?
No, it's not.
Is it limited by the type of offense, whether it's drugs or theft?
It is not limited based on that.
I'm going to talk a little bit about transport. Inmates that are serving time, including our capital murder inmates that are serving life without parole, are they sometimes transferred between locations?
Yes, we, as TDCJ has to make decisions on those placements around those 104 prisons, as I mentioned earlier. We move anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 inmates a day on buses or vans all around the state of Texas. So they are moved frequently.
And again, kind of the same similar question with regard to jobs. Is that movement, who you're moved with, limited by virtue of your offense?
No, sir. It's only based on the custody. So when an individual, any individual G2 or G3 custody could be on a bus, and that's with up to 40 other inmates traveling together on the road.
We talked a little bit about medical treatment. Who provides all the medical care for the Texas inmates?
So we have two university partners. So the University of Texas Medical Branch provides the vast amount of medical services and mental health services for the entire eastern and southern part of the state of Texas. And then the northwestern part is provided by Texas Tech University.
Talk about housing, jobs. Let's talk a little bit about commonly, how does visitation work with people serving a sentence in the Texas prison system?
So we have two different main forms of visitation. We call them contact visitation and non-contact visitation.
And somebody serving in a G2 or G3 status, like we talked about, are they available to have contact visitation?
Yes, they are.
And what does that look like for those of us who are fortunately not presently in the prison system?
Sure. So many of them are around a room this size. And within the room, you would have multiple small tables. It could be round or square tables. And
Well, post-punk mama, I'm wondering if they're noticing again some sympathy for the defendant after the defense's, case in chief. And I'm wondering if they're trying to show that if someone is wondering if it's going to be more merciful to put Tanner into life without parole, there are going to be a lot of things that, according to the defense, will set him off. And welcome, Baker Raiders. Quick warning, we are in the state's rebuttal case. This witness is kind of normal. The next witness is going to be pretty shocking. So I will give more of a trigger warning kind of thing there, but we have gotten through the defense's case in chief. They have rested. This is the first rebuttal witness. He is in charge of the classification of every inmate in Texas, and he's kind of giving an overview of what the reality is if the defendant gets life in or life without the possibility of parole, where he would go kind of to general population, or the difference between then and then death row, and what kind of security differences are there. Now, it does seem like maybe the state is trying to explain that Tanner will not be automatically segregated for his safety, but also trying to explain all of the kind of privileges Tanner will have on life without parole. He'll get assigned a job. He'll be able to get medical care. He will be able to interact with other inmates. He might be put in a dormitory with a bunch of other inmates, or at least in a cell block with someone else. So I think that it kind of kills two birds with one stone, for lack of a better euphemism right now, that it shows, if anyone was kind of skeptical about the life Tanner would lead in Gen Pop, it kind of shows the reality of that. But it also, I think, if you were starting to feel sympathy for Tanner and you really bought into everything the defense said, then if you were wanting to be merciful, Tanner is going to adjust better probably on death row. So I think it just maybe adds that reality and the logic to it. And welcome, Baker Raiders. This is obviously a hard case. This witness is very factual and is just talking about the potentiality for whichever path the jury goes with, either life without parole or the death penalty.
The family members, whoever that might be that's coming to visit, including children, would come in and sit at those tables around the whole room. And then the inmate would come into the room and they would sit. I mean, it's context. So they're allowed to hug. They're allowed to hold hands. They're at the table with the person that's coming to visit them in the room with the other visits that are happening simultaneously.
Okay. And any limits on which G2 or G3 inmates are allowed to have this type of contact visitation in these rooms that you're describing?
There are no limits as long as the visitors are on their visitation list and meet the policy.
Now, what process is in place to kind of warn these civilians that are coming in there as to who's sitting at the table next to them? What process is in place to let them know who's sitting around?
That there is no process for that.
So the children and other people in the room, they're not made aware of who else is visiting them and what they did?
That is going to be protected information, essentially, so security type information. So we would not be able to tell other families the charge or the sentence of the individual sitting potentially right next to them at the other table.
And typically, how many guards are there in the room?
1 to 2 correctional officers in the room.
Let's talk about other services available to people in G2, G3 status. What type of things, for example, like entertainment, TV, internet, what types of things are available to those G2, G3 inmates in the prison system?
Sure. So almost every living area has what we call a day room area. It's just a common area where there's televisions. They can watch television throughout the majority of the day. They do have access to computers through different educational programs and college courses. The internet access is going to be very, very restricted based on the type of program or course that they're going through. So there is not just internet access for the population. And then they also are provided tablets. So they get a tablet that they are able to get their mail on digitally. They are able to read books on those tablets, send messages back and forth to folks that are outside of prison. They have games, music, books, everything else on those tablets as well.
And that's for all G2, G3 inmates, including people serving life without parole.
That's correct.
Now, we talked a little bit about volunteers that are in the prison system. With regard to these volunteers, kind of a similar question to visitation. Is there any type of divider between these volunteers and the inmates?
There is no divider.
And so,
And they might also be making a point to anyone who wants to show mercy to Tanner that there are still ways that he could predate on people. If he's in Gen Pop, if he's allowed to have these visitations, these, contact visitations, he could be sitting right next to someone else with kids, with children, with little girls. Now, typically, I don't like when people use scare tactics, but this is reality. And it's not being used like it's, the mainstream media or things like this. These are realities that I don't think sometimes if you want to give mercy, you don't think about all of the other potentialities. And I do like that the state is concretely laying those down. This is what mercy is going to look like. This is the exposure he has to other people. This is, what it's going to look like for him. And so it touches both bases. If you are wanting mercy for the defendant, which, Lord, I don't know how, but there are people out there, then you might not see it as a mercy to send him to general population where he was going to go. But conversely, if you are thinking, okay, well, Tanner's going to be safe if he's in prison and it's just life without parole. No, he has the opportunity to, be exposed to other inmates' children, either through apps or other things. Again, I like that the state is using this wetness to bring out multiple different factors that might appeal to different parts of the jury.
for example, if we're having a religious service, is there any process to make the volunteers aware of the people that are in the same room with them?
No, sir. Those volunteers come in and let's say they are going to do a church service on Sunday morning. We do what's called an all call. So we go to each living area and say, anyone that wants to come to this church service at 9 a.m., come on out and go down to whether it's a chapel or a gym area. It's just a little different based on the infrastructure of every facility. But once everyone gets down there, there could be hundreds of individuals in that room at one time for that service. The volunteers are not made aware of every single convicted felon in that room and what their charges are. And they interact and mingle amongst the population.
Let's talk about commissary. A lot of people may not know what that means, but give us just kind of a general description of what is commissary.
Sure. So way to think about commissary is just a store within the prison. They have spend limits based on their custody. So G2 and G3 inmates can spend $105 every 2 weeks within the commissary. They can buy all different kinds of food, drink items, shoes, different small appliances. We sell alarm clocks, fans, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different items, hygiene products and things like that that are for sale.
And is that limited between G2, G3 inmates,
It is not limited. No.
including someone who may be serving life without parole for capital murder?
They would have access to all those items.
So just to be completely clear here, is there any, other than the term of sentence, is there any meaningful difference between somebody classified as G2 or G3 other than just their time of sentence?
The only real difference is when you look at basic prison life is going to be a slight difference in the job that they can be assigned to. So a G2 can have essentially any job in the prison setting. A G3 can have any job unless it has access to multiple areas of the prison. So a quick example is a G3 inmate could not work in maintenance because they might have to go and fix a shower on one side of the prison and then fix a toilet on the other side of the prison. So that's multiple areas. But that G3 could work in the kitchen because that's one area, or the industry building. So they surely still have jobs. It's just a small variance on the type of job that they can be assigned.
You talked about G4 and G5 inmates, and that is changes due to the behavior.
That is correct.
And when somebody has that type of disciplinary issue, would that cause potentially their classification to change?
Yes, that is possible.
And for example, let me just give you an example. If a G3 inmate, let's say, commits a minor assault, one that doesn't require extensive medical care, is that something that they would have potentially a classification change?
Sure. So if someone commits an assault of that nature, a disciplinary infraction would be written. They would go before a disciplinary hearing officer, and if they were found guilty, they would then come before the unit classification committee. So it's a 3-panel committee who would make a decision on whether or not their custody needed to be downgraded. So they could be downgraded to G4 or G5 if it was more egregious, or remain at their current custody if the panel thought that it was not a significant concern.
So there's a possibility that one could assault a guard or inmate or staff, but not even lose their classification.
That is possible if it was not serious in nature.
Let's say they do lose their classification. What's the process for that to be reviewed and changed at a later date?
Sure. So if today somebody is downgraded to a higher custody, they have an automatic review date at the 6-month date of their downgrade. So 6 months later, they would come back before that committee again. We would reevaluate how they've behaved through those 6 months and then make a new determination on if they're going to be promoted or remain where they're at.
And so once that's complete and they get their review, is the inmate then allowed back to the same access they had before?
Yes, if they are promoted, they go back to that same access that they had prior to the disciplinary.
And is it possible that somebody could commit multiple disciplinary infractions, including assault, over a long period of time and simply just move back and forth every 6 months between their classifications?
Yes, sir. It happens often. It's very fluid. So a classification is a very fluid process. And we do see that often where individuals violate rules and regulations, get downgraded, get promoted again, get given another chance, and then continue down that path of negative institutional adjustment. So we do see that often.
I'm going to talk to you just briefly about, I think it's called restrictive housing.
Sure.
These would be people that are, I would assume, are G5 inmates. Is that right?
No, sir. Restrictive housing is actually above G5. So it's a more secure housing environment that is above the general population.
And is that based upon the offense you commit when you come into prison or something you do while you're in prison?
It could be a culmination of both. So there's only 3 reasons why we place individuals into restrictive housing. This makes up a very small portion of the Texas prison population, about 1.8%. They have to be a confirmed member of one of our security threat groups or gangs. These are one of our this is not a street gang. These are organized prison gangs. They have to be a member of one of those 5 gangs. Number 2 is they have to be a current escape risk, or they have to be a current significant threat to prison operations. So this is someone who has consistently displayed aggressive behavior. So they have to fall into one of those 3 categories.
So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what offense they committed on the outside.
Not necessarily, unless, for instance, they escaped from a county jail, per se. So that could be a situation where it was prior to incarceration. But the majority of these are situations that have happened during our custody.
While serving time,
It has occurred keeping a very close watch on the defendant. I think that the very concrete, clear reality that whatever, choice he gets, this is what prison's really gonna look like. I don't think that I don't think he's been concretely aware of what prison's going to be like. So I do worry that he's going to do something stupid tonight. So I do hope that they keep an eye on him, but just the way that he has used these sort of tactics as a manipulation, not that threatening self-deletion is a manipulative tactic in everyone, but in Tanner, it's been shown to be a manipulative or control kind of tactic. I do worry that with the walls crashing in, with the reality coming down to it, that he is going to attempt to do something in these last days of his trial. So I do hope that, and I'm sure the prison is much more aware and on top of it than, a streamer on a comfy seat.
how does someone tell the difference between a G2 inmate and a G3 inmate?
Well, our line staff will not know that per se. They don't wear a different color uniform. They don't have any other identifiers other than for one of our correctional staff members working on the floor to understand or know that right away. There are, of course, reports and things that the classification and administrative staff can see to know who is doing what sentence.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, how does someone in the prison system, whether it's a prison security official, medical staff, or a volunteer, how do they tell if the person they're interacting with has committed a violent murder or they're serving 2 years for DWI?
They would not know that unless they looked them up on the computer.
Let's talk a little bit about behavior management. You talked about how people have reviews in a committee and things. What, in your experience, what's the best motivator for people to act right in prison?
In my experience, the very best motivator is going to be the possibility of parole.
So the hope of getting out.
That's right. Hope is a critical piece that we try to tap into through management and rehabilitation. But yes, someone's ability, knowing that they have a parole review coming up sometime in the future, is a keen driving factor behind positive behavior.
Just in general, is prison a stressful environment?
I think that could be a very good way to put it. It is inherently negative, right? You have an environment where you have thousands of people who don't want to be there. And so, yes, it can be stressful. It can be a negative.
And that might be why they have so few people in segregation because, from the line staff to the prisoners, no one knows what you've done. Now, I do think in Tanner's case, even if he was quiet, with the popularity and media coverage of this case, I would think it would be impossible not to know what he did. But there's probably a certain level of anonymity if you don't, you don't disclose what you're in for. And having never been to, jail or prison, I don't know if there's a taboo against talking about what you're in for, but that could be a general unstated rule that you don't ask what people are in for to kind of avoid these predator prey sort of situations. I don't know.
Environment, that's something that we have to manage daily.
Now, I'm just going to talk about a little bit how the prison system interacts with the inmates. Do inmates have any direct control over where they live and who they live with?
No, they do not.
Do they have control over the type of housing that they may have? You said it was dorm or cell block. Do they have any control over that?
They do not.
And then with regard to inmates serving a sentence,
Now, KY Granny X13, I will say that there is there's a channel named Jumpsuit Pablo. He has a wonderful velvety voice. That aside, he used to be in prison and he's very candid about his bad life choices, but he has a lot of insight into prisoners. And according to him, With high profile cases like this, a lot of prisoners are very keen to know who's coming into the prison. He says that a lot of people very much, follow these cases as prisoners and really keep an eye on who's coming in and do not take kindly to these type of people. That being said, he definitely has much more experience of the reality of prison than I do, but I will say he's a really good creator and really positive, so I would give him a look. He's, getting into true crime and that kind of stuff, and he does have a unique perspective. I would love to work with him sometimes. He's much bigger than me, but it's it's definitely, he has a different perspective, and he has said that a lot of prisoners spend Jumpsuit Pablo. I think he is a cat person. He does have a really, really nice voice. He's got a very deep, calming voice. So if you like to listen to things just for the audio tonal quality, and he brings a lot of honesty, humility, but reality to kind of what prison is and what these, inmates or, uh, you know, these potential defendants are looking at the reality of what prison is. So, yeah, definitely give him a look, but he might have more insight because, like I said, I'm a goody two shoes over here who and, DJ or JD DeLay is another former prisoner who talks a lot about prison justice, and he's a really good guy too. So don't judge a book by your cover, because, if I did, I will say JD DeLay looks very intimidating, but he has a really good message, a really good story, and I've really appreciated his insight on a lot of these cases, but he's a little rough around the edges, but I really appreciate that, his authenticness and his humility. Um, I have never thought that you can atone for any crime that you've done or any wrong that you've done, but JD and Jumpsuit Pablo have taken accountability for the wrongs that they've done, and the defendant hasn't. So while the defendant can be forgiven by the Lord, in my opinion, it takes that accountability first, and I don't know if he's ever gonna reach that step.
What is the possibility that their living arrangements may change?
It's very possible. Earlier, I spoke about the fluidity of classification, but it goes deeper than that. So each of our prisons have different missions, right? Whether it's a security reason, a medical reason, a treatment reason, there are a large amount of reasons why someone could be moved internally within a prison or to another prison altogether. So that is something at the state classification level that we monitor on a daily basis and then make those decisions on those 1,500 plus moves a day around the state.
So with regard to prison life, is it possible that an inmate's location within the actual unit they're in, is it possible that that may change?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that who they are housed with in a dorm, is it possible that that changes?
Yes, sir.
I think I already asked you this, but I want to make sure. Is it possible that they may be in Beaumont one day and in Wichita Falls the next?
Yes, sir. That is possible.
And that's just based upon what the prison system decides is in the best interest of population and efficiency.
That's correct. Yeah.
And
I very much like the strategy and how they're attacking this on multiple prongs. Again, if you were worried about or you thought that Tanner wouldn't have interactions with other people or, the ability to get near children, this this testimony has completely disabused you of that. If you think that, "Oh my goodness, Tanner can't deal with all these extra stimuli, a dorm room, this, that, and the other, he'll be moved without his consent." I like how they're covering so many different bases. Again, it's not something that we saw from the defense, but I do like that they are looking at the multiple different objections people might have and thinking, on their feet to answer those and, give the jury the information they need to make the choice they want to make. And welcome, welcome, everyone, and Squid Pro Quo Raiders. We are on the state's rebuttal witness. This is the first rebuttal witness. I should change the banner, but prisonologist. Basically, this is the head for prison logistics of the state of Texas, and he's kind of giving a rundown of the reality of life, both from a security kind of standpoint, both for Tanner and uh, the volunteers, the civilian workers, but also sort of what life really looks like with life on or without parole and then on death row. So the different kind of really everyday nuts and bolts things that if you were a jury member who might be feeling sympathy or wanting to show mercy to Tanner, these are the types of things that general population is going to look like. He's either going to be in a cell block or a dorm. People in theory shouldn't know what he did, but in order to get segregation in a Texas prison, you have to be part of one of the so not outer, but intra jail gangs, a flight risk, an escape risk, or you have to be such a behavioral risk in and of yourself that you just make the functions of the prison hard to work. So he is not automatically going to get segregated to, account for his safety. But also, he may be, as in general population, allowed contact visits where, he could be sitting at a table with his family, and the family next to him might have small children and not be aware of what he did. So I do like that the state is approaching this from multiple different, questions or lines of inquiry that the jury might not have been aware of because, like me, they might have thought that he would be segregated because he would be a target. I mean, I don't really care, but it is more paperwork for the jail.
Given that propensity for change, given that propensity for stress, if any particular inmate who is triggered by that stress and tends to react with violence, does that cause any potential problems while in prison?
Yes, any behavior where the result of their actions is violence, that's going to be a significant concern. It's a concern for my staff. It's a concern for the other prisoners that are incarcerated around that individual. So yes, the manner in which somebody reacts to their environment, especially if that reaction is violent in nature, that is going to be a concern.
And then secondarily, in the prison system, you said I think you used the term infraction. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And can you just give us the 10-cent version of the types of things that may be infractions?
Sure. So you have on the low end things like they're not in the right area, right? Or they're not listening to an order that's given to them from a correctional officer, or they're being disrespectful towards staff, things of that nature. All the way up to significant contraband possession, cell phones, drugs, weapons, escape attempts, serious assaults, homicides. It is the full array. Again, kind of going back to just the way it is here in society. All those infractions that I listed, it's the same thing within prison, with, of course, more structure and expectations on the way they behave and manage their behavior within prison.
And you said talk about drugs, not to speak ill of the prison system, but there's still drugs in our Texas
Thank you
prison.
so much,
That
Heidel,
is a
for
fact of life.
dropping
Yes, sir.
by. And I do want to warn you that the next witness after this is somewhat of a bombshell witness. Uh, do be mindful of your mental health because the next witness coming up is somewhat of a surprise. There is a voir dire prior to him being asked questions in front of the jury, and that's as far as I got because they took a lunch break. But this is one of Tanner's male cousins, and he is alleging that Tanner SA'd him on several occasions during his childhood. Now, he also makes the bombshell claims that he told the defense multiple times of these assaults when they reached out to him to get to see if he possibly was going to be a character witness. He claims that the defense said that they would help him reach out to the state, never did, prompting him to basically put up a Facebook post saying, "Hey, I don't know how to get in touch with the state, but I'm Tanner's resident or relative. I told the defense this multiple times." So it's quite bombshell, but I do want to be I do want to be respectful. This is going to deal with SA, and in childhood and family, victimhood and victimology. And, so if you have any of those triggers, I do want you to be mindful of your mental health. And I will try to give a warning. They have blurred him, but he's very matter of fact about it. He's very kind of matter of fact and lays out what happened. But it's very graphic. So not really, really graphic, but he's just very matter of fact. And you can tell that he's been trying to get this story out. And it hurt me that, no one was listening to him on the defense, and I'm glad the state got him, but it is going to be incredibly difficult testimony.
And for example, I asked you before, if an inmate is caught committing one of those infractions by a guard, and their default, because of whoever they are, is to resort to violence, does that cause any problems?
Yes, it does. And to your question, go ahead.
Is that the same thing you described for somebody who reacts to stress and change? Is that the same type of problem?
Yes. Yes.
Now, kind of dispelled a couple of myths here. Is it true that there is a typical predator versus prey person or inmate in the prison system? Is that true?
There is no mold for me or anyone in the correctional setting to say this person will or will not be a predator or prey. No.
You just can't tell.
It is case by case. Yes, sir.
Now let's talk a little bit about, I talked about the Walensky unit.
Sure.
And where is it located?
I was a captain over death row at that facility. It is in Livingston, Texas.
And so let's talk about a little bit of differences here. With regard to housing at the Walensky unit in Livingston, is it the two different types of housing that we have in the normal prison system, or is it one type of housing?
It is different and is one type.
And then with regard, I'm going to ask you some of the similar questions here.
Sure.
With regard to the movement of inmates within that unit, how does that differ from the regular, say you're a G2 or G3 inmate at serving time?
So like I explained earlier, for that movement going to and from the dining hall and things of that nature, there is nothing like that within the death row environment. So anytime before someone is going to be taken out of their cell within death row, they're completely searched, strip searched. They are then they redress, restraints are applied, the door is open, and they're escorted out of their cell with two correctional officers at all time, taking them where they need to go, and they remain restrained the entire escort.
And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly here. Is that the same for transport, medical, things of that nature? Does that remain the same for that?
Yes, transport's completely different. They will never be on a bus. Anyone assigned to death row is going to be in a van, a secure van by themselves with vehicles in front of and possibly behind, following and chasing that vehicle. Much higher level of security oversight for types of transports. For your question about medical, someone in G2 and G3, they get essentially what you and I would know as in a doctor's appointment, right? They get a little slip with their time. They show that slip to the correctional staff and they walk down to the unit medical department. You contrast that with death row. Those individuals, again, are restrained and escorted to that medical appointment. There's no one else around. The hallways are cleared, and that staff remains with that individual the entirety of the medical or mental health appointment. So they are not going down there alone.
We talked about structure, routine, and change. Talk to us about the difference between structure, routine, and change between normal prison unit and the Walensky unit in Livingston.
Sure. So death row by nature is far more structured. It is they remain at that facility for the entirety of their incarceration up until that sentence is carried out. The structure of their movement is much different, as I just explained. So it is very different compared to the general population movement. The living area, they are in the cell by themselves. There's not a cellmate that's assigned to their cells. So everything about it is far more structured and a lot higher level of management and oversight.
That's what Sean.
Let's break for lunch, okay? And we'll start up at 1:30. All right, see you then.
Now, the questions the defense has are really, again, following the model of poor Tanner. How will we defend poor Tanner? Good Lord. No, don't buffer with his stupid face on. Ew, come on. For the love of not just yet. I did get Squaw Bob sent me the brain, which definitely shows that I have, spatial distancing problems. Now Mr. Mo can take this all apart and not have to have one half completely put together so they can remember how to put it together the other half. Yes, I took apart the brain because it was super cool and you get to look inside it and all this fun stuff, and I won't do that right now because I legitimately could not put the circles back with the circles. I have I have less than great spatial distancing, and put togethery, skills.
This is my CV, sir.
The true and correct copy of your CV,
Yes, it is.
okay, does that reflect the things you talked about earlier with regard to your work in the prison system?
Yes, sir, it does.
So it's this time with Officer Stage 310.
Six through 10 is good.
No,
Cross examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Patrick.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you again. Now, Mr. Stain asked you some questions that made it sound like you're just terrible at your job. The prisoners are running amok, you have no way to know who's violent, and God forbid you transport them to a bus or they're just breathing. That's not accurate, is it?
No, sir, that's not accurate.
Now, what's your top priority for your division?
Our top priority as an agency is public safety. That is our number one core function, is providing the safe incarceration of individuals in Texas and protecting our citizens.
And that also includes the safety of the staff, the visitors, and the inmates.
That is correct.
Now, let me clear up a couple of things. You went through it pretty quickly on the Wyndham School District contracts for educational. Nobody's going to a school, right? That's them educating the prisoners, the inmates.
That is correct.
Who the hell ever thought that they were busing inmates to high school? Who the hell thought that? No one with a functional IQ thought that they were taking inmates to, like, inmate high school. Oh, thank you so much. I hope so.
They come into our facilities and they have a campus essentially inside of the prison walls, and that's where they conduct their educational services. They also do vocational services, so they might be able to learn how to be a diesel mechanic or things of that nature.
Sure. And talking about inside the prison walls, a G3, which is anyone with over 50 years, would include someone with life without parole. That means they're restricted to living within 4 concrete walls, right?
They are within the walls. Yeah, it could be concrete, it could be fencing, but yes,
And that they're not allowed to live out at a work camp or anything like that.
that is correct.
And when you talked about working outside, you meant outside the building, not outside a prison facility.
They could do both.
A G3 could?
Yes, they could work outside the secure perimeter in a what we call a field squad.
Sure.
They would be under direct armed supervision.
Oh my God. Look, normally I don't take pleasure in other people's pain, but Tanner being made to work like menial jobs in the Texas heat with no air conditioning, I would watch that on pay-per-view, not gonna lie. I would also tempt him to run, not gonna lie, which is why I'm not a cop.
Now, you talked about there being 104 prisons. How many can house a G3?
34 of those prisons within the state they're designated to house G3 custody.
And you talked about your division is in charge of transport too.
That's correct.
And you do safely transport prisoners all the time, intake to different facilities, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. That's one of our missions. Yes.
What is wrong with your collar? Now, this is about as much as tight as I grew up in the era of turtlenecks, and I don't know about anyone else, but those feel like they are trying to strangle you. So you will never see me in a turtleneck or a dickie, as I love that. Look, Of all the things that I love to wear, the fact that they made a little mock turtleneck and called it a dickie, I don't know why, but it amuses me. I love humans, we're so weird. I don't know why I got onto that, but oh, because he's messing with his collar. Is it too big, too small? What is going on now? Because it doesn't look too tight, but he looks like I cannot do this collar thing, not one more minute.
Now, let's back up and talk a little bit about some of the things we've talked about before. How many employees does TCDJ have?
We have around 34,000 employees throughout the state.
And how many inmates do we have approximately right now?
This morning, the count was 142,464 incarcerated.
And it's your job to determine, your division, I guess, not you personally, but your whole division's job to determine which facility best suits the needs of an inmate.
That's correct. That is one of our goals.
And that's an ongoing process throughout their incarceration.
That's correct.
So when we're talking about reviews every 6 months, that's not because you're looking to be easy on people or turn them loose. That's because you're wanting to be current.
That's correct. That 6-month time frame was more specifically geared towards when someone gets a disciplinary infraction.
Sure.
But there are many reasons why someone could receive a classification review. It could just be because they've been accepted into a new program or things of that nature. So it is very fluid and it does change often.
Now, let's talk a little bit about that. Your determination involves more than just security, right?
Correct.
And what are some of the other things you're looking at?
Some of the biggest driving factors behind classification and placement is going to be their medical needs. So for instance, if someone that needs dialysis, well, that 104 prisons becomes much smaller on the options that I have on where to send and place somebody. Their mental health needs, their treatment needs, programming needs. So classification is surely a dynamic process of systems that encompasses a lot of different correctional professionals, medical professionals, all giving input and using tools to best assign someone where they fit.
Now, I think when we talked before, you said for the individual inmate classification, you're using a holistic approach.
That's correct.
And what does that mean to you?
So holistic, that's going to mean it's not just based on their sentence. It is not just based on their charge or their crime. We have to look at many factors. Some of them I just mentioned, right? Their medical needs, treatment needs, their criminogenic history, their demographics, their age. We look at all of those different factors and find the best placements for them around the state.
And for example, you've mentioned before about how they've behaved in other facilities. An example of Tanner Horner, he's been in 2 different jails. That's something you would want to know and what happened, right?
Sure. At the beginning, I talked about the intake process.
Yes.
And so when a county sentences someone or a court sentences someone to prison, the county has to provide what's called a penitentiary packet or PEN packet for short. One of the documents that has to be included in that packet when it comes to the TDCJ is a jail conduct history. So yes, I surely need to know what that conduct was like in the jail leading up to their transfer of custody to the TDCJ.
And we mentioned before, now, are all of your staff non-uniformed in your division?
No, sir, because I also oversee inmate transportation. So we do have a large portion that are non-uniformed. We have a couple of hundred that are uniformed.
And it's a couple hundred out of, you said roughly 2,000 in your division?
Correct. Yes.
Now, when someone is convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole, where would they go for it?
Say that again. Where would they go?
Where would someone who's convicted of capital murder, given life without parole, where would they go for their intake?
We have 5 main intake sites around the state, geographically located based on the county. So we have a facility in West Texas called the Middleton Unit. It's in Abilene. We have a facility up near Palestine, Tennessee Colony area, the Gurney Unit, the Holiday Unit in Huntsville, the Byrd Unit in Huntsville. And then for South Texas, we have the Garza West facility that's in Beeville. So an individual sentenced to life without parole, depending on the county of their sentencing, we would schedule them to the closest facility for intake.
And that's not all of the facilities you have for doing intake, correct?
No, we have other facilities that do state jail and probationary type intakes, but those are the main institutional division intake sites.
And so those 5 will have the training necessary and expertise necessary to do that classification on someone who's convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole.
That's correct.
We talked a lot before about the 2 different ways that they could reside, either with a cellmate or in a dorm. And some of those dorms are pretty large, right?
Yes, sir.
And that persons who are G3 would have access. There may be volunteers, there may be staff members, things like that they could have contact with, correct?
Yes, sir.
And obviously it's your belief that they can have that contact and you can still maintain safety for the public, for the staff, for those visitors, for the other inmates.
That is correct. That is the goal of the correctional staff on those facilities, is to provide those opportunities for folks that are trying to better themselves and trying to have a positive adjustment while in prison. One of our foundational missions outside of public safety is rehabilitation, because that directly impacts public safety. The vast amount of our inmates are getting out at one point. Last year, we received 56,000 new inmates. We released 50,000. So those people are going to go out and live next to you and I, again, based on their sentence. So our goal is going to be rehabilitation, right there beside public safety. And so, yes, we want to do all we can to get them to those programs and make sure that those go as smoothly as possible.
Let's revisit a second. I know you talked about the movement around the facility, and it sounded a little willy-nilly. That's not what authorized movement means, is it? What does authorized movement look like for an inmate, say a G3?
Sure. So there's different reasons why they can move. So they could be coming out with a group of individuals going to a work assignment. They could be coming out and going to a program or to a meal. So there's different reasons why they can move in groups. There's also many reasons why they can move individually. So that example I gave earlier about the medical appointment, they wouldn't necessarily be going in a group. If just that one individual had an appointment, they would show their slip.
Yeah, this is a Fairlife protein shake. Mr. Mo, I've been struggling to eat, which is kind of the weirdest damn thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, being a former fluffy kid who's never had a problem eating all of my feelings. It's been very odd to move to someone where if I'm having a high pain day, I really don't want to eat. So the protein shakes that Mr. Mo was getting were really, really heavy and hurting my stomach. So I think We Oni recommended Fairlife because it's got different proteins. Or JKD Book, if I could explain what has happened to make me not want to eat, because people are asking me, like, what did you do? I'm like, well, I don't know. I just kind of had some trauma here recently. So it has been a real shift weirdness. And this trial doesn't help, but I've been trying to do better on actually keeping steady calories with protein, and We Only said that Fairlife has different proteins in it, that are supposed to be gentler, so so far it seems like it's working well. It's No, it's not depression, it's just it's hard when you're in pain. Some people sometimes I'll eat my feelings, sometimes not. So, you know, this has been the first time I've ever not wanted to eat my feelings. I will try to explain-orate it, but I this is a new experience, you guys.
Essentially, and the officers would let them out, and they would walk through the hallways to go down to where their appointment was.
Is that what we mean when we say there's either mass movement or they have a pass to go somewhere?
Sure, yes.
Now, as part of that classification process, do the inmates receive a complete medical workup?
Yes, that's happening in tandem with the classification process. So during intake and then afterwards as well, they see nursing staff, they see medical providers, and then their electronic medical record is updated by the university partners, the medical partners. And when the EMR, medical record is updated, that feeds into our inmate management system. And so we can see the vital data that we need. We're not going to see, for instance, someone's diagnosis, but we would see if someone, say they need a bottom bunk because they can't climb into the top bunk. So we would see different living and work restrictions that would impact how we assign people.
Okay. And in those 34 facilities, you're able to make those accommodations?
Yes.
Now, did they also receive a mental health workup as part of the classification process?
Yes, sir. Again, not as part of the classification process, but it's happening simultaneously.
Okay. So that happens, and that gives you data to rely on in doing the classification.
Correct.
Okay. So let's describe that quickly. You described the medical uploading their information, and there was a medical exam as well.
Yeah, so there's different medical evaluations, and they put that information into the electronic medical record, and then out of that, our system pulls vital pieces of information that could impact their housing or job assignments. Same thing with mental health. So for instance, if someone is in a crisis event or has some kind of critical mental health need, the mental health providers might tell us, well, that person needs to be assigned to a specific inpatient program, which would give them a certain psychiatric score is what we call it. That would then tell us that individual can't live on certain units. They can only live at inpatient mental health units, as an example. There's other things far down that spectrum where it might just say, well, he or she is taking medication. Well, that medication is not going to dictate where they live.
Okay. So that's both an exam, and I assume they're looking at mental health records.
But yes.
Now, is G3 the minimum classification for someone who's convicted of capital murder and serving life without parole?
Yes, that is the minimum.
So they would never be in G2.
That is correct.
What is institutional adjustment?
The way I like to best describe that is when they arrive to the institution, how well do they manage that change? How well are they interacting with other inmates, with the staff, with volunteers, anyone else around them? Are they complying with rules and regulations? And ultimately, are they making the most of their time, or are they going down more of a negative path and violating rules and regulations and getting themselves into trouble? So it's how they are adjusting to prison life.
But once again, are you looking at how the institutional adjustment on the county level too? That's something you take into consideration?
We do evaluate that during intake, yes.
And we talked about when someone gets downgraded to a G4 or G5. Those inmates would receive additional restrictions, I assume?
Yes, sir.
And you talked about you have different restricted housing available. Do you also have safekeeping housing available?
We do have safekeeping, yes.
How is that used?
So we have a small portion of our population that's in safekeeping. They still are in a cell block environment with cellmates, but we have a very robust safe prisons program and a PREA program, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. So you have a lot of different factors that go into evaluating someone's potential likelihood of being a victim within prison, or the fact that they have been victimized. We evaluate all of that, weigh it out, and then if the committee, again, the UCC committee, that 3-person panel, decides that someone is in need of a higher level of safety or safe living, they could be placed into safekeeping status. They're still in general population buildings. They are just not in a general population living area. They're separated. They can still have jobs and go to the dining hall with other inmates and all those other examples. They just live separately.
Okay. So that could be within those 34 facilities we're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's go a little bit bigger picture now. Is there guidance available for how to manage and maintain a prison classification system?
Yes, it is. There is many different guiding policies and evidence-based practices that guide classification.
I believe we talked before about the National Institute of Corrections had some guidance from the federal level.
Yes, the National Institute of Corrections puts out federal level recommendations and things of that nature that, depending on what that guidance is, could or could not influence the state of Texas policy that drives classification.
Now, obviously, Texas may have some of their own guidance from the legislature, that sort of thing, correct?
Correct.
Now, are you able in your role in your division to take that kind of guidance and then build on it to improve the system?
Yes.
And how often are you updating policy procedures to try to make this a better system of classification?
It's frequent. There's many different standard operating procedures, policies, and plans. It's kind of 3 different buckets of information that are reviewed frequently. They could be updated because of new technology. They could be updated because of new, again, evidence-based data that shows us we might need to move in one direction or another. We look at different genders and how we're classifying females versus males. So there's a broad spectrum of changes that can and do happen throughout the years to make sure that we are providing for the mission of our agency, that's protecting the public. And so we do not want to stay stagnant. We always want the most informed decisions guiding how we play out our mission in the state.
That was going to be my next question. And I assume when you talk about a prison being kind of a city, a secure city, you're also looking out for everyone within that city.
That's correct.
Now, I guess this is kind of obvious at this point, but you talked about someone on death row is obviously going to have less contact with everyone in that city than the other inmates, right?
That's correct.
But your division's job, that's part of what you're doing, is trying to make it as safe as possible for those people who aren't on death row.
Yes, to the
You have
extent.
that additional freedom.
Sure, to the fullest extent possible, yes. What's
a classification profile?
So the way that I like to describe that is this happens during the intake process, and then it never stops. So when someone comes into our custody, whether they're a first-time offender or if they've been with us multiple times, we are going to build a profile that works to encompass everything that we can about that individual. The idea is that down the road, the operators in the field have a good sense of everything about this person's history. So we go through family background, jobs, whether or not any kind of gang affiliation, any prior arrests, whether they did or did not lead to incarceration. So we try to gather as much as we can. There's a bunch of different assessments that happen that guide treatment. So IQ tests. We do an adverse childhood impact evaluation. We do the Texas Christian University drug screenings. So there's a bunch of different tools that are used during intake to build this foundational profile about every person that comes in our door. And then throughout their incarceration, that profile is constantly updated, again, based on that institutional adjustment. So how they're behaving, things could change from day to day, and that needs to stay current.
And is that information useful in fulfilling your primary goal?
Yes, it is useful.
Now, we talked about, I mentioned a second ago that the prison is kind of a city behind the walls, but this is a city that has 24/7 security, right?
Yes.
And the inmate movement is
It's a prison, yes. Doy.
restricted,
Yes.
and the staff members are properly trained,
Yes.
and the civilians who enter are appropriately screened.
They are screened, yes.
So in your expert opinion, is the process that you're using a reasonable and effective way to house someone who's been sentenced to life without parole while ensuring the safety of the public, your staff, the visitors, and the other inmates?
We do all we can to provide for the safety of the staff and for the public. So yes.
That's what it's showing.
Redirect.
All the same exam processes that you went through and talked about with regard to someone serving life without parole in the prison system, that does exist in the Polinsky unit on death row?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about your goals and what do you use to be effective and provide a safe and effective place. But regardless of your goals, does violent conduct against staff still occur?
Again, just like the society analogy, we have laws to prevent violence against citizens. When you are dealing with a prison environment and in a society that's built up of, or made up of hundreds, if not thousands of convicted felons, no matter how hard we try as an agency, we still have violence and concerns within prisons.
Is that your same answer when it comes to potential violence against volunteers that have been screened and in your prison system?
Yes.
That's what Mr. Goble.
Couple quick questions. For the G3s, are there any incentives for housing, things like that, that are available to them?
There are some incentives. So again, this goes back to the conversation of parole eligibility and hope. And so when I talk about hope within a prison, hope is a very intrinsic thing a lot of times. It's hard to tell who is going to act out because they do not have any hope. So we have, as an agency, an obligation to try to incentivize someone who may not, in other words, have any incentive because they might not be have a parole eligibility. So we do have some certain living environments within some of those prisons where if someone does not get a disciplinary case for X amount of years and they show good behavior and they're working hard at their job assignment, they might be able to live in an incentivized dormitory. But they're still within those 34 maximum security prisons. It's just certain dormitories within those prisons.
Okay. So there is positive reinforcement for even someone who's sentenced to life without parole.
Yes, that's correct.
And I guess specifically, it's already been testified to that Mr. Warner had no disciplinaries at the Wise County Jail or at the Tarrant County Jail. That's something your division would take into consideration in building his profile.
Correct. Up until the last day of his incarceration in the jail, and then leading up to the transfer to our custody, we would get that up until that very last day, and the county would let us know his behavior.
That's what it's from.
Mr. Tate,
Nothing further on.
may this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to go to normal speed for this next witness because
You ready for
Go.
your next witness?
Yes, Judge.
Okay.
so this first
You gotta come
part
Yes.
is going to be outside the presence of the jury. Now, I do want to warn you that this is one of Tanner's relatives, I believe a cousin of his, and he is stepping forward with claims that he told the defense that Tanner SA'd him multiple times during childhood, and they did not get, well, they didn't do anything with that information. And when he stated that if they weren't going to do anything with that information, he wanted to talk to the state, they didn't facilitate that. He is going to claim that the defense twice contacted him. He told them about his experiences with Tanner, and they ignored or didn't do anything with that information. So he eventually, this is all going to come out, but he eventually put a Facebook post up about the fact that he had been victimized and wanted to get in touch with the state. So this is somewhat of a surprise witness. The defense is going to be objecting to this witness even coming in, stating that there's not enough proof that this happened. This is the dangerous game you play when the defense brought in a unsubstantiated essay that Tanner claims happened to him. Well, we have just as much, evidence for this particular witness. So the defense can't have their cake and eat it too. They can't use, a mitigating factor, one of the traumas Tanner experienced, his SA, that has no corroborating evidence other than what he said, and then disallow the state to have a similar witness come out against Tanner. And thank you so much for subscribing. But the defense is incredibly against this witness going forward, and they are going to have a voir dire outside the presence of the jury.
Ability.
Okay, do you want me to go through, I don't know how much they want me to go through of the questioning. Do you want everything that I'm gonna ask?
Well, you'll have to have enough evidence to
Well, under,
prove
yeah, just,
that it's admissible.
it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a full-blown jury issue, but enough for me to determine whether or not it could be proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
And I would like to say thank you. This witness is going to say in his own words why he stepped forward, why it was so important for him to tell his story. Um, and he will say in his own words how much he tried. But thank you, sir, for coming forward, especially, being a man. I know there's some taboos about this, there's taboos and shames when you're a victim. And thank you so much for putting those aside, probably getting very much outside your comfort zone to speak truth. Um, this is incredible bravery. You want to talk about masculinity? This is masculinity. This is bravery. This is standing up to a monster and saying no. And it was incredibly powerful when the two female victims did this. And I have a feeling it's going to be incredibly powerful here too. But that also means that we might need to take breaks. So for those of us who are, or those of you who are new here, we have two different mental health breaks. We have a short 30-second puppy kitten break. And then if we need a longer time or I need a restroom break, we have about a 2-minute Moxie emotional support donkey break. So feel free to ask for those in the chat. This is an incredibly difficult trial. And these have been incredibly, heartbreaking witnesses and infuriating witnesses. So be kind to your mental health if you have to pause or take a break. I do go back in the live streams, break them up into individual witness videos. And I do always put a warning label on ones that I find to be disturbing, either because there's no accountability taken and it might infuriate you, or there is some heavy topics discussed. So I do try to be very, very mindful of you guys' mental health, but you guys are the first protectors of that. So if you need to stop, take a break, watch something else, do what you need to be healthy to yourself.
We're gonna, for purposes of the record, we're gonna call you Billy. We're just gonna use your first name, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you
Okay.
move closer to the microphone? There you go.
Yeah, make sure you speak up. How do you know Tanner Horner?
I know Tanner Horner because my uncle had a baby with his mom, and I was raised as his cousin
And so how long have you known Tanner?
since I was 3 years old.
Was there a time when you lived on the same property as Tanner Horner?
Yes,
Do you recall about what time frame that was?
2000 to 2004.
And after around that same time period of 2003, 2004, was there some type of sexual assault incident that happened to you?
Yes.
And can you tell us what that is?
It was a sexual assault down by Lake Worth Lake, right down the street from Tanner's grandmother's house. Do I need to go into detail?
So, and that was,
Do be mindful. He is very matter of fact, but this could be triggering if you have any history. Um, n- I just want you to be warned that he is very matter of fact. He's going to use the words, so do be mindful of that.
what location was that though, specifically?
Just to the right of the boat dock off into the trees right there.
And yeah, can you tell us, you don't have to give the full version, but what happened to you there?
He went back there, he pulled out his penis, he started masturbating. He told me to suck it, and then he grabbed my head and made me. And then he told me to bend over, he tried to put it in, it would not go in. And then he told me to continue sucking, and then he pulled out and finished by masturbating.
And did you tell Tanner no, or did you go along with it? What happened?
I was scared of Tanner. He was bigger than me. He's beaten me up before. I went along with it.
And this is the side that I don't think the defense understands, but they've consistently shown people that were in positions of authority or had some authority to Tanner. This is the Tanner that people see when he has control of them. This is a completely different person. That's why he hasn't acted out in prison, because he's a bully, because he's a jerk. They don't show their behinds because they're really cowards. But when they find someone that's weaker than them, someone that they have control over, they will let their sadistic, evil side out. And the defense has done such a terrible job because they knew this man was out there. This is going to come out that he told the defense all of these things and they ignored him. So they knew this man was waiting in the wings. They knew that Tanner had another victim, but they wanted to make Tanner the victim. And if you don't think that's going to piss off every single person, sir, you are a brave, brave man. And thank you for coming forward.
And after that point, was there a different incident that happened to you?
It was later on around 2007 when Paranormal Activity first movie came out. I woke up to him masturbating above my head. He pretended that he was asleep. I moved out the way, yelled several times, and he just kept on doing it. And then I waited till he went back to bed, and I laid down and went back to bed.
After,
And the sick thing is that he probably tried to tell someone, but that family has a history of excusing and condoning this kind of behavior. And my guess is Granny, nice grandma, is going to say, well, Tanner's a little special. He can't control it. Tanner never had to be accountable for anything because they always made excuses for him. I'm with Bill. If they had made Tanner live up to certain expectations, I don't think we would have been here today, but he got coddled, he got babied, and he got told that everything was his diagnosis.
these incidents, did you ever hang out with Tanner and one of his best friends, Cody?
Yes,
And can you recall anything about that event?
it was 4th of July. Tanner's grandmother had parked her van at the fireworks stand. It ran out of gas because I guess she was sitting on a hill. It wouldn't start. It rolled back. Cody gave us a ride home to his house. And in the car on the ride home, Tanner had mentioned he'd wondered what it would be like to kill somebody.
And how old were you about that time?
That time I was older. Had it been 2008 or 9.
Now, also, I want to caution you, this is outside the presence of the jury. The defense is this is a hearing in front of the judge to see if he will allow this witness to come on, because to give the devil its due, quite literally, the defense does have every right to object to this being a surprise witness. However, I believe this gentleman is going to ID the defense down to the outfit they wore, and is going to tell them, and it's going to prove that they were told multiple times that this skeleton was in Tanner's closet. They chose not to do anything with it, and the state testify.
And
There we go.
so that first
Sorry, I'm back. I was waiting for it. But do be mindful that we are going to have to listen to this again. So be mindful of your mental health. Sorry about the break.
sexual assault was around 2003, 2004,
Mhm.
and the second sexual assault was 2007.
Mhm.
How old were you at those times?
2004, I would have been 10 years old.
And 2007?
Let's see. 13, 14, somewhere around there.
And then this other event was in 2009 when he made that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And how old, what is the age difference between you and Tanner?
I'm not a behaviorologist, but the judge did not look happy. The judge did not look happy at all. And I do believe that if we were to do a psychosexual panel or analysis on Tanner, it would definitely skew to the sadistic side and to the younger side. I do not believe that he is without his very, very scary paraphilias. Not so para meaning abnormal, and then philia, just like your fetish. So one would obviously be young children, and it seems that it doesn't matter the gender of the child. But especially knowing that this witness was out there, this makes the defense just again more incredibly scummy and unethical. There are lawyers out there like Steve Gosney who did this kind of work, who was anti-death penalty for moral reasons and worked on cases with some of the worst inmates. And he did it with integrity. He held the state to his burden, but he wouldn't pull ish like this. And that's the problem. That's what really makes me mad about this case is because I'm in law tube, I know so many good defense attorneys who, yes, will try to be zealous advocates for their client, but aren't going to disrespect not only the court, but the victim and the process by pulling in this absolute garbage and then being such absolute callous and callow people that they don't even respect a real victim. They wanna put Tanner's victimhood everywhere and every way, but, a victim of Tanner, well, what did you do to Tanner?
About 3 years.
Have you spoken to anybody about these sexual assault incidents before?
Yes, before the trial started, I spoke to the defense.
How many times?
Once she came out to our house. It was warm outside. I believe my kids had just started back to school. And she was in a white SUV, tan overcoat, and tan pants.
And did you have a phone call with anybody from the defense as well?
Yes, it was 2 to 3 weeks ago.
And in both of those conversations, what did you tell the defense? You don't have to go into detail, but
The first one, I told her about the sexual assault. And the second one was over the phone. She initially called my mom, and I told her about the sexual assault when I jumped on the phone with her.
that's what it's judge.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, there were some different dates there when you were
answering those questions. Can you help me out? In the notice we received, it talked about the first incident being between 2001 and 2003. Does that sound right?
2001, 2003 would have been when he set the hay bales on fire and started a fire in his backyard.
That's when you were living at Risinger Road.
Yes.
Okay. So this would have been after that when he moved back to the shack.
Yes, around
Do not mess with us weirdos. Something tells me this man might be Spielbergian himself because of his eidetic sort of recall of not only what people were wearing, but again, kind of different things he uses to timeline this, like the paranormal thing had just come out. It's sort of the way I would categorize things and how I would remember things. So don't mess with this man when it comes to date, time, and recall, especially of his own life. The defense is going to try, but he is going to be very, very accurate.
2004 is when I moved off the farm. He was back at Jackie's.
Okay. And the second incident, is 2007 accurate for that?
Yes, it was the same year the Paranormal Activity came out because Melissa rented it from the Red Box.
Okay. So the 2004 incident, you two would have been what ages?
2004, I would have been 10 or 11. He would have
been 12 or 13.
Yep.
And then the 2007, you'd have been 13 or 14, and he'd been 15, 16.
Yep.
And the statement about wondering what it'd be like to kill somebody, you said that was 2007?
That was around 2007, 2008.
Okay. So once again, he's 16.
So he was a predator for a long time. Again, tell me how he doesn't fit antisocial personality disorder. If he had been caught and not coddled, if this hadn't been hidden, he would have been under the care of the juvenile justice system. He would have been pegged as a predator. Let's be real. He would have been identified as someone with a long, extensive history of interactions with the police. If his family hadn't coddled him, if every time he set something on fire or essayed someone, it wasn't everyone else's fault. So tell me again, defense, how he doesn't, explain it in words that I can understand, because as a twice college dropout, it isn't logicking to me.
Yep.
Is that a yes? Okay.
I also very much love this judge. This judge has been incredibly paternalistic in the best way. Very, very caring and attentive to both sides, the defense or the state witnesses when they were needing a break. He's been very good at kind of blaming himself for these breaks instead of drawing attention to the witness needing a break. He's been very attentive to the jury as well. So I very much appreciate this judge and the state. If we had to do this monstrous, horrific case anywhere, I believe that the state and the judge have been incredibly good. And I hope they show this in law schools, not because of the graphicness of the case, but how incredibly well prepared, restrained, and competent, respectful, and dignified a case like this can be handled, because I think the state has been exemplary in this case.
And did you speak to your mom or anyone else about this incident?
No, I never told my mom about the sexual assaults or any of that.
What's incredibly telling is how long the defense is taking to try to come up with a question. It's incredibly clear that they have been clocked, that they had this information, that they did not share, that they knew this had the potentiality to come out, and they made sure and tried to block, you know, methods of communication from the state. Now, as there has to be balance for all things, the defense have been horrible, disgusting, gross, and incredibly disrespectful, trying to make Tanner the victim of everything. And oh, Athena caught him doing drugs, so he had to take her life. It was incredibly disgusting. So there has been a balance, but the state has been wonderful and the judge has been wonderful.
Okay. Now, when you say you spoke to the defense, you don't mean Susan, right?
No, over the phone call the second time, she named herself Shawnee.
And was your mom present for either of those conversations?
Yes, my mom was present for the phone call one, and my mom was present for the one where she showed up at her house.
Defense, there is a witness. You can't get out of this. You can't say, "Oh, no, we didn't talk to him, we swear." No, he remembers the tonal quality, the name of the woman. He also remembers the exact way that your investigator was dressed. So do you really want to continue, defense? It's gonna be incredibly telling that they have nothing with which to denigrate this man.
I just happened to be at my mom's house when she showed up.
Notice how long it's taking him to try to find a question. This is an incredibly bad look. In case you didn't know this, and look, y'all, I'm not a lawyer, but the attorneys are supposed to be officers of the court. They are supposed to be ethical. They are supposed to be honest dealers. Now, everything is nuanced. Yes, of course. There can be different ways to see a case and try to defend it. But this is again, I don't know. I'll have to talk to a lawyer. In fact, I might see if Tony has some time Wednesday. We can talk about this because I wonder if this crosses into sanctionable. Now, I don't believe the defense is under any obligation to share with the state inculpatory evidence that they have. So, evidence that would implicate, sorry, for the love of Cheetos, use words. Um, they're not required to give over evidence that their client is guilty, but the fact that they tried to silence a victim is not gonna sit well with anyone, especially after they made such a big damn deal about Tanner's alleged essay at 10 years old. You cannot have your cake and eat it too, defense, and you knew this person was out there.
And what made you decide to come forward now?
The fact that he killed the kid and it's the truth needs to be told.
And again, thank you, sir. I know this is probably the hardest thing to talk about. No one wants to share this in public, but and I say this as a mom, okay? You are being such a good example for your kids. You are showing them what real bravery is. Because real bravery isn't the Marvel movies that Tanner watched. It's it's standing up to your monster in court and saying, "That monster did that," and taking away his power to hurt anyone else. It's going up and doing something that you never wanna deal with, that you don't wanna talk about, that you don't wanna look at, but doing that so that no one else's child has to be a victim. That's real heroism, not some Marvel bullshit that Tanner was thinking or living or fantasizing. This right here is superpower.
I talked to defense and I told them many times I wanted to speak to the prosecution, and they never got me in contact with the prosecution. So I posted on Facebook.
Explain that, defense. Explain why a witness, a victim, had to post on Facebook. You utterly morally bankrupt pieces of trash. Allegedly in Minecraft.
You said many times, you said you spoke to him twice.
Oh, what did I do? Oh, crud.
Me in contact with the prosecution. So I posted on Facebook.
You said many times, you said you spoke to him twice.
When I spoke to the lady the first time, I told her I wanted to talk to the prosecution.
Okay.
She never got me in contact with them. When I spoke to Shawnee, I told her I wanted to talk to the prosecution. She never got me in contact with them. So I went to Facebook, and then the state contacted me off of Facebook.
Okay. You posted on Facebook, and then Ranger Espinoza called you, came to see you. What happened?
WFPD Wichita Falls Police Department left a card at my door, and I made the choice to make the phone call to the Ranger Espinoza.
You're right, pass the witness.
Very correct.
Nothing for the right now, Judge.
Any objections?
You're object on the grounds of that basically surprise, even the last supplemental information we had at different dates than he's testifying to here today. This witness was not, we've had a long extended time to deal with extraneous acts. This witness was not noticed to us before the trial started.
Those objections are overruled. He'll be allowed to testify, and you may have a running objection to his testimony throughout his testimony. Both sides ready for the jury?
Ready, Judge.
Let's go.
So, yes, again, I think the judge is pissed. I hope, but again, running objection, tell it to someone else. This victim will not be silenced. Oh, good Lord, my earballs. What the heck, cougher?
Right.
Again, you can just use your first name, but can you introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Billy.
And who do you currently live with?
Currently live with my wife, my mother-in-law, and my 3 kids.
And how are you related to Tanner Horner?
My uncle had a baby with his mother, and I was raised as his cousin
So how long have you known Tanner Horner then?
since about 3 years old.
And during your childhood, were you around Tanner Horner a lot or a little?
I was around him a lot.
And what did you guys do when you guys were around each other?
Usually playing, he liked to pretend play Dragon Ball Z, and it ended up him just beating us up. Throwing rocks in the rivers, creeks, out there on Rising Road.
Was there a time when you guys lived on the same property?
Again, these are all signs, wanton destruction, casual physical violence that would fit that profile of antisocial personality disorder. Yeah, the defense didn't find it, couldn't, diagnose it because they didn't give their experts this witness. Why am I not surprised?
Yes.
And what time period was that, roughly?
2000 to 2004.
After 2004, did you have any contact with Tanner Horner at that point?
Yes.
And where was Tanner Horner living at that time?
At Jackie's house in Lake Worth. Sorry.
What got you into contact with us, the state, in this case?
The fact that I told the defense I wanted to speak to the prosecution, and out of impulse, I made a Facebook post.
You made a Facebook post. When did you post that?
I posted that 2 to 3 weeks ago.
And what did you post?
It was a post about, let's see, Zero is fabricated. Tanner Horner sexually assaulted me and basically beat me and Nicholas up as children.
And when did you meet with the state prosecution for the first time in this case? Roughly.
26 of last month.
So of April?
Yeah.
From that Facebook post, you just mentioned that there was some type of a sexual assault. I'm going to ask you a few questions about that, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The event that you posted about, and you don't have to be exact on dates, okay? But do you know about when that first incident happened?
The first sexual assault?
Yes.
The first sexual assault happened right around 2004.
And where did that happen?
Down the street from Jackie's house, Lake Worth Lake, by the boat dock, off in the wooded area.
And you say from Jackie's house. How far away from Jackie's house is this boat dock?
Not even 5 to 10 minutes.
How did y'all get there?
Walk.
So it's a 5-10 minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys go there frequently before this, or have you been there before?
Yeah, me, him, and Nicholas would always go play at the park, go down to the lake, climb on the rocks and all that stuff. They had piles of sand out there. And then one day Nicholas didn't want to go with us that day.
Now, how old are you at that time? And then how old is Tanner Horner at that time?
I would have been about 10. Tanner would have been about 13.
So Tanner Horner is about 3 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, is Tanner bigger or smaller than you?
He was bigger than me.
His uncle had a baby with Tanner's mom, so I don't think they're biologically related, but they were raised as cousin. I don't know. Oh, Samantha Shoelover, I know Jackie knew. She had to know. I I think that the entire family has a very, very messed up background and lacks supervision, and then when something does happen, it's swept under the rug or explained away because of Tanner's, disabilities or, cognitive or developmental whatevers.
Can you go ahead and tell the jury what happened on that day?
About the whole sexual assault.
Yes.
All right. It started off as we were all going to go play down at the park as usual. We ended up walking down the street. Tanner wanted to go to the boat dock. We ended up going off into a little wooded area of the boat dock. Tanner immediately pulled out his penis, started masturbating. He told me to get down and start sucking it. I was scared of Tanner at the time, so I did. And when a little bit of time goes by, he tells me to bend over. He tried to put it in. It would not fit, I guess. So he turned around and he had me suck it some more. And then he finished by masturbating next to the tree.
At this point, why were you scared of Tanner at that time?
Because he would like to pretend play Dragon Ball Z, which ended up him just beating us up and kneeing us in the stomach.
And
I was scared of him.
the us, was that his brother?
Mm-hmm.
Was there another sexual assault incident?
Yes.
And again, we're going to kind of, I know dates sometimes are, but do you recall the date on that sexual assault incident?
The same year Paranormal Activity came out, the very first one, 2007. He woke up to him masturbating above my head. He pretended like he was asleep. I backed off in the corner. He continued to act like he was asleep. Then he laid back down, covered up. And I just stayed there until I made sure he was asleep, and I went back to sleep.
Now, at this point, I think you were probably around 12, 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And with the 2007 incident.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
The court reporter.
And the judge has been really kind. Because he's done the things a couple times, and most judges are really sticklers about that, but he's been much more lax, and he did it a couple of times when he was talking about his assault, and this is one of the things that I've really noticed about this judge. When witnesses are kind of doing that, but they're in the middle of something very emotional, he doesn't, pester them. But then when they're talking about something a couple questions down, he will say, "Hey, we just have to for this." Again, really great judge, very, very good show of wisdom and kindness. Yeah, I am worried. I swear to goodness, if the defense does, Imma lose it.
Has to take down all your answers.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So just say yes or no.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, the state has been very good too. So like I said, as terribly difficult as this case is, it's so incredibly reassuring, reaffirming, especially with some of the dumpster fire state cases we've seen brought up in the last few years, to see a case done so well and so respectfully.
So after these two sexual assault incidents that happened to you, past when you were 13, did Tanner Horner ever sexually assault you again?
No, he didn't sexually assault me again.
Okay. After this point, though, did you still have some contact with Tanner Horner?
Yes, I got dropped over there to hang out with him. My parents were going through their own issues.
And was there an occasion where you hung out with Tanner and his friend Cody?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us about that?
No
Yeah.
objection, hearsay.
He hadn't testified as to anything said. Don't testify as to what other people told you. You can testify as to what happened.
Testify to what I heard, right?
Nope, can't do that. You can only testify as to what you saw.
I saw directly from Tanner.
Rephrase your question.
Can you?
And again, the judge is being so caring here, and I like that he's taking the time to explain. And I don't think we saw this very much with Borowski, but I very much think that Borowski would have been the same kind of very paternal, kind judge. Now, this judge has shown that he's not willing to let the defense play. He's gotten sharp with them once or twice, but for the most part, he's been very even keel.
When you hung out with Tanner and his friend Cody, did Tanner Horner make a statement to you?
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
And what did Tanner say?
Tanner said he wondered what it would be like to kill somebody.
How do you remember that statement?
But it triggered in my head when he actually did kill somebody.
And do you recall about when this happened?
It was 4th of July. It had been after 2007, so about 8 or 9.
So 2008 or 2009?
So, after both of the essays, into more of their teenage years, it seems like his parents were having some difficulties of their own, so he had to go live with Jackie or hang out with Jackie. And during that time, he hung out with Tanner and his friend Cody, and Tanner made the statement, during this time that he wondered what it would be like to kill somebody. Now, so and then the witness is saying he remembered that statement because, it kind of came back to him when he learned that the defendant had actually been charged with taking the life of someone. Uh, I don't believe that we he might have red rummed previously, but I will say he was incredibly disorganized and terrible at the red rum he did. I don't think he would have been able to get away with red rum. I do think that there are going to be a lot more victims, including inside his family and other children that he had access to. I do think that there's a potentiality for a lot more, of those kind of victims. But I think he was incredibly terrible at this. So unless he had actually really, really planned something, I don't see him being able to pull off a red rum and not get caught.
The sexual assaults that you posted about, you just told us about, who else have you told about these?
I told
Objection, relevance.
Sustain. No, hold on. She'll ask you a question.
Now, Billy, in 2015, did you get arrested and ultimately convicted for a solicitation of prostitution charge?
yes,
That did not involve a child, though, did it?
no,
Have you ever kidnapped, sexually assaulted, or murdered a child?
Objection, relevance.
Sustain.
I'll pass on this, Judge.
Cross-examination.
Again, while people might have their, upsetness about, well, the sex industry, that's a different that's a different apples and oranges. Although, if he could have not had any felonies, that would have been better.
Billy, I have a question for you. If the school records show that Tanner moved back in with Jackie in 2002, would that change the dates we're talking about for you?
I guess I'm going off my memory.
Okay. So if he was in the Azle School District in 2002, then we back those years up a couple years. Would that still fit your memory? Would you may have been, what would that make you?
Maybe
8 or 9 and him 10,
probably, yeah.
something like that. 10, 11, something, 9, 10, something. Now, just a second here.
Come on, defense.
Now, the second incident when you two were teenagers, there was no physical contact.
No physical contact.
Now, you said that you and Tanner, you're not blood relatives. You're related through his half brother.
Yep. Yes.
And your family and his family, before he moved back in with Jackie, rented houses on a farm,
Mm-hmm.
separate houses.
Yes.
So that's why you were around each other so much then.
Yes.
Now, at that time, when you and Tanner were forced to hang out a lot, were your parents struggling with an addiction?
Yes.
And Tanner's mother, I guess her boyfriend at the time, your uncle, were they struggling with heroin and meth addiction?
Yes.
And did you tell, I guess you stated to Ranger Espinoza that Jackie was too busy dealing with those addictions to actually raise Tanner and his brother?
Yes,
Is that how you felt?
that's how I felt.
Did you and Tanner witness Tanner's mother chasing your uncle out of the house with a butcher knife?
Yes, it was me, Tanner, and Nicholas all put up a tent in the living room, and Melissa comes through chasing Eddie out the house with the butcher knife. That was on Rising Roof.
Why were the children left in these homes? I mean, I know Megan Fox is covering a case where the state is all too happy to rip children out of a loving and, parent home. Why in the hell are these children left in these homes? What is TCF doing? I mean, what is going on here? Why did this not why was there no oversight? And this is my problem with all DCYFSs. They seem to go after, good families, families that are trying, and then completely refuse to take away children from people struggling with addiction or want to reunify those families over and over again when the parent has shown that they will choose drugs over their children every day of the week and twice on Sundays.
And after that is when Tanner moved back in with his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Did they get evicted?
I'm assuming so, yes.
Now, the time that you knew Tanner, was he ever depressed?
Not that I know of. He was just over energetic.
What about suicidal?
There was one time in my life when I stayed the night with him, and I woke up to Jackie taking him to the mental ward for a suicide attempt.
You remember, was that overdose or cutting? What was that?
I believe it was right after he got his shack, is the bedroom in the backyard.
Give me 1 second. I think you said that the last contact you had with Tanner was in 2018. You helped him get a job.
Yes, I got him a job at all. My son's moving and storage.
And for those of you that are new here, Court TV has, for some undefinable, nonsensical reason, decided that we need to see close-ups of Tanner's face. So I refuse to let him get airtime on my channel. So I just turn into Giant Mo for those moments. Now you can still hear the trial, but I am not giving him any channel time.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Very briefly, Judge. Seems like the dates may be a little foggy, but is what Tanner Horner did to you, is that clear in your mind?
Yes,
Why come forward now?
I figured the truth needs to be told. He deserves to pay for everything that he.
Oh, hell no. Okay, no, we are putting him back on the screen because I'm about ready to lose my ish right now. Oh, hell no, this little butt monkey from hell who I hope gets Gen Pop, just because in Minecraft. I want you to look at his face. Like, you know what? I'm going to need you to take a breath. Remember, you are saved by the Lord. But I'm going to need you to look at this Dubmass's face, because how dare you make a face?
Is that clear in your mind?
Yes,
Why come forward now?
I figured the truth needs to be told. He deserves to pay for everything that he's done.
Objection, Your Honor. Court ruled on this.
Nope, I'm okay with it. No objection needed. We are okay with telling him that he needs to go straight to the frying pan. Allegedly in line, perhaps.
Sustained. The jury will disregard the last statements.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Goebel,
Nothing further, Your Honor.
may this witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Judge.
Thanks, sir. You go with the bailiff.
Tanner also said something under his breath. I don't know what he said, but he is not happy. And yes, we are getting a Moxie break, and it looks like we have a psychiatrist or a professional next. So let me get these banners off, and we will play a Moxie break. Get your snacks, get your drinks. But yeah, you can't unring that bell.
I take it down. Woo! Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I take it down a minute and a half. Yeah. When the dark gets long and the tea is hot, and the motions filed are quite a lot. When the state says boom and defense says pass, that's when I call my mini ass so classy and sass. Woo! Oh, Moxie, the emotional support mini donkey, tiny but mighty, a courtroom honky tonky. If the trial goes sideways, she don't panic or balk, just a soft little hee-haw and a judgmental walk. Clip clop, trotting through the mess. Ears perked, high, and unutterable distress. When the facts get wild and the lawyers get snarky, I lean on my emotional support. If a witness says I can't recall, she side-eyes gently from the stall. If the sidebar lasts all afternoon, she hums a bray that's slightly off tune. She's pocket-sized but bold of heart, a fluffy illegal work of art. From board down woes to verdict day, she snacks on hay and leads the way. Oh, Moxie, queen of the pasture class, small but ruling the law to grass. When the timeline spirals and takes get funky, there's peace in a steadfast mini donkey. Clip clop, courage, fluffy and spunky. All hail the emotional support as Moxie. Oh.
Yeah, this is more of the vibe for Mornings with Mo. This has been a very difficult trial. Normally, I don't mind doing the harder trials, but this one has been harder than most. And maybe it's because we have the transcript of what actually happened. Or maybe it's because Athena was so incredibly, incredibly innocent, or she looks a bit like my daughter. Or all of my daughters, they were all blonde. Maybe it's a combination of all that and then how awful the defense has been, but it's been one of the harder cases. So we are probably going to do a Sarah Boone rewatch. I do have a Sarah Boone wig. I do talk as Sarah Boone. I might do a reread of all of her letters, something completely different after this trial. Because it has been one of the harder ones.
I got to do one more thing outside your presence, okay? So let's take our afternoon break. I'll call you right back here.
Now, most of the time we don't get to hear what happens outside the presence of the jury.
7:05 hearing with the witness. So, Ms. Anderson, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Dr. Rambula, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Dr. Rambula, have you received any additional records since we spoke, or actually since you wrote your report in April of 2026?
Yes,
What records have you received?
numerous reports by your expert witnesses. Some of the notes, I didn't review all of them. The handwriting, I think, of Dr. Ryan.
I believe they're a blue, but I haven't looked very closely at Tanner, so I'll be honest with you. I could be making that up.
It's not as bad as mine, but I had trouble reading it. And then, let's see, I looked at the testimony from Cassie as well. And then I just listened to Billy's testimony today.
Did you listen to any of the experts who testified in this matter?
Briefly, there were two that I was able to follow about an hour each one.
Sir, I have only one question. Did you ask Freud what his deal with his mom was? Because if anyone had a fixation on his mom, it was Freud, right? For a friend. Also, does he not remind you of the bald eagle Muppet? Or the old men Muppet? But the old men Muppet seems like a too easy, like, slow pitch. And his bearing and his hair reminds me of the bald eagle Muppet.
Who was that?
The first one, I think it was Dr. Specht. I'm not sure. He was from A&M.
Dr. Edens?
That's it. That's him. Yes, sir. He might have been the first witness you had. And then briefly, Dr. Ryan last week sometime when she was on direct.
Okay. Based upon, and which, you said it was an interview with Cassie. Which interview?
It was actually not an interview. It was, I guess, court testimony from Cassie Wyatt.
Okay, do we know, was it her civil deposition? Was it the hearing that we had in this court? Which hearing are we talking about?
It was, as I put together, related to this case, so not the civil suit. I didn't know there was one.
Well, let me ask you this. If, when you looked at the transcript of that, were there lots of black lines on certain pages?
Yeah, there were some holes. I can't say that I remember big black lines standing out, but there were holes. That's the best what I remember.
Okay. What do you mean when you say holes?
In other words, it wasn't confluent. There were gaps, so to say.
So it wasn't the complete transcript?
It looked fairly complete except for maybe some omissions or things that were either not transcribed or something like that.
We had a hearing that began in December of 2025 and continued in April of 2026, wherein we discussed your testimony and your findings.
I am bumping us up to 1.25 because, well, I have ADHD.
Do you have any additional findings or conclusions in addition to the report that you've already produced?
Yes.
And what are those?
Based on me looking at the records again, I remember that hearing where I hadn't reviewed that, and the expert reports, the transcript, the testimony today. I do have an opinion regarding future danger.
And what is that opinion?
That based on the evidence, there is a probability that Mr. Horner will commit violent acts and constitute and be a continuing threat to society. I think I'm paraphrasing the statute, but I don't remember it by heart.
What do you base that on?
On the statute, in other words, it has to do with the statute regarding future dangerousness in sentencing hearings.
I understand that, but I'm asking upon what evidence are you
Oh, I
basing
see.
your
Okay.
opinion that constitutes a continuing threat?
So previously, I expressed concern about his temper, his ability to control himself, the outbursts he had. I think I mentioned his attitude towards women in general, based again on the audio recording that I listened to regarding his mistreatment of Athena. And then after looking at the rest of the reports from the experts you provided, it was
Again, anyone could look at this and make a case that he is a clear and present danger to all women in his vicinity, as long as they're, well, like Leonardo DiCaprio until they age out, I guess. But if they don't have authority over them, if they are smaller than him, if there is anything that he could have leverage over him, he could be a predator. He is a clear and continuing danger to all those in society that we try to protect.
clear that he had some issues with executive dysfunction, difficulty with emotional processing, self-regulation, basically anger, so to say. and that he was also impulsive. And so because of their reports and the evidence they provided in those reports, coupled with my concern already about his ability to manage stress, control himself, his behavior, and particularly keeping in mind what I heard regarding what he did to Athena, that was the basis for my opinion.
Are you going to render an opinion on any particular diagnoses that you feel would be appropriate for Mr. Horner?
Well, if anyone asks me, sure.
What diagnoses
Okay.
do you feel would be applicable to Mr. Horner?
So based on let's see, let me state it this way. So when I submitted my report, I had reviewed records that covered approximately 20 years of his life, perhaps more than that. And based on that information, I rendered diagnoses of depression, anxiety, longstanding. I didn't point out in the previous hearing that per the records, major depression recurrent was something that came up, unspecified anxiety. There may have been some features of panic attacks, but nothing was really codified in a diagnosis. Additionally, and I think I stated in my report, I suspected that there were some traits of PTSD based on the sexual assault he endured as a kid that he didn't want to talk about, but I still nevertheless included it as a possibility, not necessarily a disorder per se. Based on the records I reviewed up to my report, the diagnosis of ASD had been, I guess, by testing closed, that door was closed, so to say. In other words, the two psychologists concluded he didn't have it. But after looking at the reports from your doctors, who probably see ASD a lot more than I do because they see kids, I didn't have any issues with that. At the time that I looked at the records and interviewed him, there was an uncertainty on my part about how restrictive and repetitive his behaviors were, his interests. And that's one of the components and the criteria for ASD. But I knew he had some social issues. I mean, he'd had that all his life. But you have to meet two, and that's why it looked like he didn't meet the criteria. But once again, you're experts. I don't have any issue with their diagnoses.
Interesting that a real professional who I think he's trustworthy. He's bringing out things that he agrees with the other experts, and the way he is testifying, I find him to be very much more professional. And now I'm trying to not be biased because I know I don't like the defense. But he is being generous to the experts. Now, I think he is being professional in where he agrees with them and then where he disagrees. But it's interesting that another psychiatrist wasn't going to put him on with autism. Apparently, he didn't feel like one of the two components that is necessary was pronounced enough in Tanner with his own interview that he could consider it to be an actual diagnosis. So it is interesting to hear that. Now, he does concede that he agrees with the other professionals, but it's interesting that he had questions and he thought that perhaps Tanner didn't fall under the diagnostic criteria.
Because they collected a lot of evidence and they see it more often. I spoke about personality pathology. That remains the same. He has significant features of antisocial personality pathology. There may be some borderline personality pathology undercurrents in there as well, perhaps narcissistic, and that's about it. And lastly, after my evaluation, I was not very impressed with the amount of drugs that he had been using before. He rather minimized that, and so I took his word at face value. And I saw some inconsistency in the records regarding his drug use, but your experts, particularly Dr. Ryan, uncovered a lot of evidence that he was using drugs a lot more. So I didn't identify any particular drugs. I just knew that he was using marijuana, cocaine all of a sudden, and it looked like there were some hallucinogens as well.
What about paraphilic disorders?
Hallucinogens. I have never heard hallucinogens spell or hallucinogens. What is that how it's really pronounced and we've been pronouncing it screwed up all this time? I mean, because this guy went to doctor school like for forever. Or have we been saying hallucinogens right and he's just completely confuserated that word? It's too late in the day to be confusing me with English.
The same. He has some features of sexual deviance, and I refer to that. That was based on what I listened to in the audio tape regarding what he did to Athena. And then this morning or this afternoon, when I heard Billy talk about it, that would infer that there's been some aberrant sexual interests that have been longstanding.
So it's your opinion that if something happens when a child is 10, that can create a longstanding issue?
He predated on and tried to SA his cousin at the age of 10. Yes, that is so abhorrent as far as, where he would be on the Tanner sexual maturity, medical kind of scale, that he is already having these proclivities that would. Yes, that's absolutely something that would follow you into adulthood. These are not proclivities that change.
When that person is an adult and does something like this at
Not-
the age of 30?
Not necessarily, but it's unusual for somebody to exploit somebody like that, particularly when there's a 3-year difference, the size is different. There's a lot of force involved. I had expressed some concern regarding how forceful he was during sexual activity with his peers, and that's normal as long as everybody's consenting. But there was a question about Cassie, saying not, I'm at the stop here. So he was perhaps pushing the limits more. And then when I read her transcript, she talked about some of the role playing that they did. In particular, what caught my eye was when they role played that he was her daddy and she was a little girl, which could very well resemble what happened.
Now, I will say, and look, I read a lot of books. This is a kink. Normal consensual adults could choose to do this. I don't understand it. I don't get it. The age play thing is really, really, really weird to me. But there are grown adults in healthy consensual relationships who do like this sort of role play. It's not my jam, but there you go.
Between him and Athena.
But you would agree with me, though, that that's not terribly uncommon. I mean, we see movies back from the 60s and 50s talking where a woman is calling her paramour daddy.
Right, but role playing per se was consensual. It was like people explore, but I can't disregard the similarity between their role playing and then him acting out in a sexually deviant manner with Athena. And it's not unusual where that sometimes can occur when somebody acts sexually deviant towards another. You're right, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but those can be some warning signs when they show up in the records or somebody self-report.
And so you've read the records, you've read the reports from all of our experts, so you know that around the time that this happened with Billy, that Tanner himself had been sexually assaulted in a similar manner.
Yes.
And that wasn't of any significance.
That doesn't 2 wrongs don't make a right, 3 rights don't make a left, 4 rights make a square.
When you looked at both of them?
The significance that to me was clinically apparent was the difference in ages. And when I say that, in other words, if Tanner had been at that age at whatever, 13, 12, whatever it was, 10, acting out with another 10-year-old or a friend from school, that happens. But when that type of activity occurs with somebody that doesn't want to participate, there's a big difference in size. Between let's say a 5th grader versus an 8th or 9th grader, that's a pretty big difference in developmental years. So that is a bit different. I'm not saying that laid the groundwork for what he did, but I didn't disregard it, and it certainly caught my ear, given the types of individuals I've evaluated in my sexually violent privilege hearings that I participated in.
I'm sorry for interrupting. In this particular case, we're dealing with a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Right.
So we're not.
Even my internet's been so good today, and even it was like, "Heifer, be quiet." No, none of this makes it right. Does the defense not understand that they should read the room? I don't understand why are we why are we why are we mincing hairs? Why are we splitting hairs? Why are we trying to dance on the head of a pin? Wrong is wrong is wrong. The fact that he was victimized and then chose to victimize another child is not out of the realm of how some children deal with this. The fact that he chose a remarkably smaller child, younger, and then was incredibly aggressive about it, use that power dynamic is different.
Prepubescent children.
I understand that. Right.
Okay. You keep trying to put him in different grades. You'd agree with me that you're not going to find a 10-year-old in the 6th or 7th grade.
Probably not.
Have you made a diagnosis that Tanner meets the diagnostic criteria for any of the paraphilic disorders?
No.
Have you made a diagnosis that Tanner meets the criteria for antisocial personality disorder?
No.
No, but he has features, and he's allowed to talk about those features and how they show up in Tanner, what they are, and, why he didn't meet all the criteria, but what exactly he has and what that relates to real world behavior.
So the only thing that you're here to testify to is that Tanner, based upon the records that you reviewed, that there's a probability that he would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society.
That's my opinion. The change in my diagnosis was that based on the evidence your experts collected, I didn't have any issue with that.
With regards to the records that you reviewed, did you review all of the records from the Wise County Jail?
Not all of them, no.
What records did you review from the Wise County Jail?
Whatever was sent to me, so there were notations of incidents, like for instance, the suicide attempt. I reviewed that. There were some mental health records. I think it's Helen Therapy Center that provides mental health treatment to the detainees in jail. So I read all of those. If there's something else, then I didn't see that.
What about records from Tarrant County?
Yes, I saw those.
What records did you review from Tarrant County?
Up until, in other words, there were 2 periods when he was receiving treatment from Tarrant County MHMR. I want to say one was 16, something like that, and the other was more recent in 22, when he sought treatment again. Up until October was his last visit, I believe.
One moment. Dr. Rambula, just one last thing, and it had to do with the records. Did you receive any of the Tarrant County MHMR records from the state?
Yeah, they're listed in my report, and I haven't reviewed any subsequent records from Tarrant County MHMR.
Okay. Lost his, pardon me, Doc, I've lost a report amongst all my papers. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Do you have a supplement or an addendum to your report that includes all of the documents that you reviewed?
No.
I think that's it, Your Honor.
Mr. Berry?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rambula, are you, in addition to the diagnosis that you've already stated in your report, and then just regarding the possibility of future danger, and in your questioning with Ms. Anderson, are you also going to offer, some characteristics that are found in both the paraphilic disorder and the personality pathology that you observe potentially in Tanner, whether or not he meets the full diagnosis, full criteria to be diagnosed with those disorders?
If asked that, yes, I can answer.
Your Honor, other than that, I don't have any further questions.
Any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
Dr. Arambula, if you'll go with Deputy King for just a few minutes, we'll call you right back in, okay? Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. We don't have any objection to the doctor's qualifications. We know he's qualified. However, he has specifically stated that Tanner was not diagnosed with a paraphilic disorder. Therefore, it would be confusing to the jury to start talking about what symptoms there might be. If it wasn't diagnosed, it's not relevant. Same with anything with
antisocial personality disorder. If we're talking about symptoms, it's not relevant because the doctor has already said that Tanner does not meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder. We also have a couple of other things with regards to Dr. Arambula. One is he's used the term sexual deviance. That's not a diagnosis for the DSM. And if he were to be able to use the term sexual deviance, again, it can confuse the jury. Same thing if he were to try to use the phrase psychopathology or psychopathy. He has done that in the past in previous trials. And so we would ask that he not be allowed to speak about psychopathy for several reasons. One, it's not a diagnosis. And two, if he's allowed to speak about that, then it could confuse the jury. And Your Honor, there is ample research that shows just how prejudicial calling somebody a psychopath or speaking of psychopathy is. In fact, the research has stated that it's almost as prejudicial as referring to someone as a pedophile. So we know that the research supports the prejudice that it causes. And so we're asking the court to order the witness to basically stick to the diagnoses that are in the DSM. Same thing with sociopathy. It just goes along with the line that it is not a diagnosis for the DSM, and allowing the doctor to speak in colloquialisms, one, is going to confuse them, and two, creates a false impression in their minds as to the symptoms that Tanner may or may not have, and three, is unduly prejudicial, and the prejudice is clearly outweighs any probative effect.
Your objections are overruled. You may cross-examine him on those statements. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll start up in 10 minutes to 3.
Judge is like, and overruled. He's allowed to talk about traits and tendencies. Again, the defense was able to pull up multiple symptoms and syndromes that were able to, if not explain how Tanner got this way. Well, the state's allowed to do the same thing.
Gentlemen, this witness has been previously sworn to testify truthfully. Mr. Berry.
Thank you. Dr. Rambula, welcome. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. So my name is Dr. Michael Arambula.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a physician, a medical doctor.
And may I approach your honor?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Rambula, as part of your involvement in this case, were you asked to provide us with detail with your background and education and some other accomplishments as well?
Yes, sir.
And did you also, as a result of your evaluation of the defendant in this case, write a report?
Yes.
And did you also provide us with handwritten notes that you had made during that evaluation and after, in preparation for writing the report?
Yes.
But this time, Your Honor, I'll hop in evidence state exhibit number 311, curriculum detail, state exhibit number 312, the report of Dr. Rambula, and state exhibit number 313, the handwritten notes of Dr. Rambula.
No objections.
States exhibits 3.
And I very much like the experts and the witnesses that do this. I find this a very effective way to deal with the fact that you're not only answering questions and talking to whichever lawyer is asking you questions, but you're canted toward the jury. It's such a better look than that kind of swivel the chair thing. I think it's just much more effective and shows that you have a comfort and experience in a courtroom.
311, 312, and 313 are admitted.
Dr. Rambula, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time going through your curriculum detail, but can you give us sort of an abbreviated version of what your background is that qualifies you to make the diagnosis and opinions that you're going to give today?
Okay. So I'll make it quick. I attended the University of Texas at Austin and received 2 degrees from the College of Pharmacy. The first was a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy, and then later I received a Doctor of Pharmacy. As far as why I'm a physician, I attended medical school at the Health Science Center in San Antonio, and I remained there for my internship and then residency training in general psychiatry. I completed that in the summer of '91. And then I spent a year in fellowship training, that's subspecialty training in forensic psychiatry in Chicago. And that was at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center. That was a year-long fellowship, which I completed in the summer of '92. I've been back home ever since, and I'm also board certified in both general and forensic psychiatry.
So having this dual, you have two different medical doctorate degrees, correct?
Two different doctorates, yes, sir.
Yes. So with regard to your work in this case, I just want to ask you if you
How proud is his mom? Like, my son is a double doctor. Look, if that ever happens, I will never shut the hell up about it. Like, I'm gonna be real about this. I would get T-shirts made. My one of my kids is a double doctor. Like, I would be so stinking proud. Now, I would be stinking proud of the rest of them, but I'm just saying I might not print T-shirts with their jobs.
you, well, if you were, how you became involved in this case.
What I vaguely remember is that you called my office, I think it was in probably January of 2023, and arranged to meet in my office to discuss this case, after which you retained me to work on this case alongside of you, looking at records and then ultimately evaluating Mr. Horner.
And are you paid for your services related to this case?
Yes, I am.
And what is the total amount of payment for services rendered so far?
So based on the last invoice that was sent, I believe it's 28,400, maybe a little bit more than 400.
Now tell us a little bit about your experience dealing with psychiatric patients.
Well, I've been in practice a long time. So as part of my residency training and then private practice, and I still have a private practice. I see predominantly outpatients. Collectively, I've seen thousands of patients who have different types of mental conditions. That's it in a nutshell.
Have you evaluated persons that have similar mental illness or / mental conditions that you have seen in the defendant in this case?
Yes, sir.
Have you also evaluated people that have different personality pathologies like you have seen in the defendant in this case?
Yes, I have.
And as far as criminal cases, kind of talk to the jury just real quick about what you do related to criminal cases.
Okay, so criminal case-wise, I've been in probably a few hundred criminal cases. And over my career, earlier in my career, I worked predominantly for defense, and then in the last probably 10, 11 years, predominantly for the state or the DA. I've evaluated individuals for competency to stand trial, for example, insanity, mitigation for like probation, sentencing, and I've done some evals for federal judges. A couple of federal judges asked me to evaluate someone representing both sides regarding their capacity to waive habeas corpus.
So with regard to this particular case, you said that you were asked to look over some records. Do you have a list of those records in your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask you to read those, but just so the jury knows, those are listed in your report on page 1. Is that correct?
Are those his wife's glasses? Because they don't look like, even if you would put them on the bridge of your nose where they would go, those don't look like they fit his face. It's like, or maybe they're meant to be worn all the way down. I don't know.
Yes, and those are the records that I reviewed prior to and as a basis for the report that I submitted to you in April of this year.
And we're talking about April of 2026, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now, at that time, was that report rendering opinions and diagnosis based upon an evaluation that you did of the defendant?
The defendant and also the record review of Mr. Horner.
So with regard to the record review, I want to ask you some specific questions. At the time that you did the record review and also the evaluation of the defendant in this case, did you know at that time that he was going to plead guilty to the offense when it came time to go to trial?
No.
And does that create some limitations with regard to whether or not you can give a complete evaluation of the defendant regarding punishment special issues?
No, sir, because of the evaluation that I conducted and before the evaluation.
Sorry, there is a loud cougher right next to their audio. I don't know why they've not asked the cougher to move, but it is what it is. Sorry about your ear balls.
I discussed with Mr. Horner that it would probably be related to guilt, innocence, and maybe sentencing after. So because of that informed consent, so to say, I collected information regarding both. I just didn't submit a sentencing report, so to say, because he hadn't pled guilty, or I didn't know what was going to happen, so I wasn't going to do that.
Understood. So the type of report that you did submit to the court was based upon your knowledge at the time, which was that he had not pled guilty. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, up until that time, pled not guilty. Is that right?
Right.
Now, what records, talking about specific records that you reviewed, did you review audio and video recordings?
Yes, sir.
And can you kind of talk about the kind of basic audio and video recordings that you reviewed in this case?
So the audio video recordings were the investigative records, and that had to do basically with Mr. Horner riding in his FedEx truck before this crime. And then I also reviewed the audio and some of the visual of the day of the crime. When I say some, because there were times when he would cover up the lens with what looked to be a sticky. And then I also reviewed subsequent audio video recordings after the crime.
And with regard to
one more.
Pardon,
And then I looked at the audio visual recordings of the detectives who were interviewing Mr. Horner afterwards. I believe there were 2 of them.
And did you?
I love him. He's like, wait, there's more. And okay, I'll be more generous. The final expert for the defense, I think that if she were advocating for more vigorous early childhood integration and assessment along with adaptive modalities and, care, I would totally want to talk to her. She seemed like a pleasant woman who is very, very, sincere in her advocacy for, individuals with autism. So, but I don't condone the way she testified. But if we were talking about another subject in another setting where we could talk and discuss the realities of, early childhood intervention for autism and, how incredibly beneficial that is, I would love to talk to her as her defense of this defendant. Ick.
Also have access to some sworn statements in the form of deposition or prior testimony in this case that you've had an opportunity to look at.
Yes.
And did that relate to persons that were family members or close associates with the defendant in this case?
Yes, sir.
And do you consider those to be collateral sources as far as your opinions go in your evaluation of the defendant?
Yes, they are.
Did you also have access to mental health, education, medical records of the defendant leading up to his arrest on December 2nd of 2022?
Yes, sir.
And are those also considered collateral sources that you used in making your diagnosis and opinions regarding the defendant in this case?
Yes, that's correct.
With regard to, are there a number of your findings in your original report that are based solely upon that documentation that you had prior to that time?
Yes, that's the basis for my opinions.
Now, as far as the investigative agencies that you referred to, did you receive records from all the different agencies that were involved in the investigation and the apprehension of the investigation of the murder of Athena Presley Monroe Strand and the apprehension of the defendant in this case?
Yes, sir.
And did you also review some records related to prior sexual assault victims that came from the Fort Worth Police Department here in Tarrant County?
I did.
Are those also considered by you to be collateral sources which you use to render your opinions and make your diagnosis in this case?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about what were you asked to do pursuant to a court order by Judge Gallagher in this case?
Pursuant to that order, as best as I can remember, it was to conduct a mental health evaluation of Tanner Horner relative to the criminal proceedings going on at the time.
And at that time, you were focused on possible guilt of the defendant, is that correct?
Guilt, and well, it's not for me to determine, it's the jury, but yes, it was the guilt innocence phase of the trial.
And what date did that evaluation take place? Or well, the interview take place on?
It was February 27th of this year
And where did that interview take place?
in this courtroom.
So here in this room, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And who all was present during that interview between you and the defendant?
So obviously myself and Mr. Horner, there were 3 deputies, but they weren't standing next to us, but they were in the courtroom. And then Ms. Anderson came in and out periodically when Mr. Horner, we took a break so he could talk with her.
And so at that time, did you have a discussion at the beginning of that process with the defendant regarding the parameters of the interview you were conducting and what that information could be used for?
Yes, sir.
Could you kind of describe that for the jury, please?
So again, per my training, I do this with every case. I discuss who I am. I'm not here as a treatment provider. Who retained me? In this case, it was the state or the DA. That it was a court-ordered evaluation, and there are a couple of guidelines associated with that because it's court-ordered. One is that the information we talk about may not be confidential, i.e. the judge wanted a report, and so I was going to put it in the report, and if it came down to me testifying, then again, the information would not be confidential. And then the second guideline in these kind of cases is that when I asked Mr. Horner something, he didn't have to answer it if he didn't want to.
And so were there some occasions where that actually happened?
Yes, there were.
So I'm going to kind of just have you tell me sort of in general about the level of cooperation that the defendant gave you during that interview for the evaluation.
So generally speaking, he was pretty cooperative. There were some areas that he was not cooperative with, and so we had to take a break. And then with each successive break, he became less cooperative and worked up. And so I didn't pursue the last time that he didn't want to talk about something. I just let it go.
And so if he didn't want to talk about something, did he avail himself of the opportunity to go and discuss it with his counsel?
The last time.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yeah. Sure.
Well, I'm sorry. I was actually trying.
So it's, again, it's based on my training. I don't ask questions that might get somebody in trouble, for example. So I don't do that. And if somebody doesn't want to talk about suicidal ideation or drug history, it depends on whether that was important at the time of the offense. I can let it go. Sometimes I'll revisit it in case the person has a change of heart and may want to talk about it more. In some cases, when the refusal has to do with the mental state at the time of an offense, that's an important subject matter to cover. And so in that case, then I will ask the person to reconsider, which I did in this case. And then with further resistance, then I would suggest perhaps you might want to talk with your attorney.
Objection, Your Honor.
And then that's it. And then I let it go with that. And if they decide not to talk about it, then at least I've given them, the option to talk with counsel.
All right. So let's talk about what is contained in your report. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of not the details, but sort of the sections and how that report is set up? So if the jury wants to read through that report, they can do that.
So the way my report is arranged is I list the medical records first, and then I'll list a synopsis of my opinion.
And this might be incredibly something that wasn't, but again, the aged professor look, it's very reassuring. The fact that he kind of fits if you had in mind, like a kind old scholarly psychiatrist, he would be from Central Casting. So I'm 99.9% sure the state did not go to him for the optics, but it is very, very clear that they chose a very established, secure, confident, and capable psychiatrist. And he does look a little bit like Ben Franklin.
Okay. When you see the history section, that's based on the records that I reviewed. So there are no opinions or analysis in there. And then within that section, I will add the interview because that's also part of the history. And then after that, then I go on to the discussion section. And that's where I repeat some of the findings in the history section, arrange them according to diagnosis that I've arrived at based on the records and the self-report. And then also my analysis of what's going on and how it relates to the offense, if at all. And then that's about it.
All right. So let's talk about your findings.
I have invented a new thing. We have reached the point in the day in trial where I am mentally just meh, I'm out a little bit. But I have learned that if you buy a hoodie about 3 sizes too big, you can make individual pockets from the leftover or the overabundance of material to put your gummy nerds in when you're watching a trial. Just in case you ever needed to know, there's a life hack from Mo. Ooh, and I rhymed. Look at me getting all poetic.
In this case, what opinions did you render as a result of your evaluation?
There's actually a typo here. There are 6. The first is he had a childhood history of abuse. That was in the records.
Okay, hold on. So childhood history of abuse, what abuse are you talking about?
Abuse I used in a larger term. His growing up with his mother, no offense to his mom, was not so stable. So there was some abuse in the form of neglect, things like that. Her and her husband at the time were argumentative, likely domestic violence, what I remember from the records, those kind of things.
Okay, but as far as him being abused, other than this, so that's the sexual abuse that's been alleged, did you have any other specific incidents of him being abused and during his childhood?
Just the abuse and neglect predominantly by his mom, and then the sexual abuse incident when he was around 10.
Okay, so with regard to him being involved in abusing other individuals, were you here for the testimony here, previous witnesses?
Yes.
And is that consistent with other statements in the medical records related to his abuse of his brother as well?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
No, interesting because in the case in chief of the state, I don't believe that now we haven't been privy to all testimony. There has been some testimony that has been, not televised. So I do wonder if the testimony about Tanner inflicting harm to the point where the brother would need medical attention has not been brought up in either the defense or the state's case. So that might be something that was a motion in limine, and they were only going to be able to bring it up if certain conditions were met. So, but I am not shocked that Tanner was aggressive and abusive towards a tiny baby. He was 10, and according to his cousin, his step cousin, he was 10 when he tried to abuse him. So I have no doubt that Tanner would be aggressive to a baby, an infant. So if there were documentations of him being very aggressive and rough with an infant, again, why was Tanner left in the home? For the safety of the baby. If Tanner was abusive to the point that the baby needed medical intervention, why in the hell wasn't he taken out of the home? No, we do not want to see Tanner, for the love of Cheetos. Freaking mouth breather. His mouth is open like this.
There was a history of him having mixed symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Okay. And I think at some point you talked about possible PTSD symptoms, is that right?
Right.
And do you know whether or not he's been diagnosed with PTSD?
Based on the expert reports that I reviewed after I submitted my report, some of the experts arrived at a diagnosis of PTSD, some did not. Prior to my report, no, there was no diagnosis per se of PTSD.
So if you have an expert that said he tested him and he did not have PTSD, would that surprise you?
No.
Now, the next finding with regard to your report, what was that?
History of autism spectrum disorder, ASD.
And there's been a whole lot of testimony related to that. I don't want to go back into that specifically, but one of the things that is that you see with regard to autism spectrum disorder is resistance to change. Is that right? How would you say that?
That's one example. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you call it something called an order of sameness?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit?
For some individuals, not all, but it depends. They like everything the same. It's consistent. They repeat behaviors. That's one of the criteria over and over, like along with that sameness. And then there's a rigidity. In other words, things have to be the same or people become upset. Not everyone, but some people have ASD.
Now, have you looked at you said that you reviewed the videos in this case, is that right?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the FedEx videos, were there multiple days which he was driving that were provided to you?
Yes.
With regard to the day of the offense itself, did you go over that thoroughly in conjunction with the transcript provided to you as well?
Yes, a few times.
And were you able to look at that transcript to determine whether or not?
My goodness, this man has fortitude, because I only read the transcript once. I will not read the transcript again. And you couldn't pay me to watch that video, all of it unedited. You couldn't pay me enough.
What was said on those transcripts and things that you actually heard yourself on that?
I did hear them, yes.
Okay. And so with regard to,
I also like that this witness seems incredibly affected with the fact that he had to, you can see, and we do have him sped up, but you can see his face doing a little bit of a grimace. He's not the first witness of the experts to show a little bit of emotion, or I will say he seems to be the first of the professional witnesses who's not having a calculated reaction to it, if I can put it that way.
what occurred in the particular video on the day, what we'll call the abduction video, did you see his ability to adapt to change based upon changing circumstances?
Yes.
Can you kind of explain that to the jury, what you saw?
So after he initially abducted her and was not talking much with her, then he started asking her questions about her family, school, things like that.
Do be aware he's going into some of the particulars of video and audio testimony that we were not privy to. This is going to be definitely difficult testimony. So, puppy kitten break, moxie break after this, but be mindful of your own mental health. I will cut this down and I can give you a recap in the morning. It doesn't look like we have too much, too incredibly long with him. I mean, possibly another 20 minutes. So, like I said, do be mindful of your own mental health, but it does seem like we're going to get into some particulars about the audio that was censored and things like that.
And it, at least by my observation, Athena seemed more calm by that. So that was an ability on his part to understand the situation, what was going on, and change his approach, as opposed to just picking her up and throwing her in the back of the truck. So that was something that I caught. And then under that immense stress of having started that crime, he was persistent in in his activities with her, basically.
And after the crime was committed and the body was disposed of, did you see his ability to change again?
Yes, as far as not being detected, covering up what he did, those kind of things, yes.
So were those things consistent with autism spectrum disorder or something else?
It was not consistent with somebody who wanted sameness, for example, or couldn't problem solve under that kind of stress. And again, my presumption, and he said it was stressful, that taking the life of a human being is stressful. Okay, so I didn't see him struggling with those kind of issues of lack of problem solving. He was still trying to.
Off topic, I like any flavor of gummy nerds, not gonna lie. Um, and then my favorite drink, Coke Zero. I know it's bad for me. I am trying to drink less of it, but it also keeps me safe for public consumption. So it is a catch-22, but Coke Zero is probably my favorite, which is sad. It should be water or something healthy-ish.
Go undetected.
Now, the next diagnosis, I believe, was a history of ADHD, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And with regard to the defendant's level of ADHD, was there anything debilitating about that with regard to him in this case?
Debilitating in the sense that he was socially a bit awkward, but that crosses over with ASD. So what I mean by that is kids who have ADHD, it's not unusual for them to be impatient and they kind of cut line, or somebody's talking and they interrupt, those kind of things. They might get on somebody's nerves because they're just throw themselves in.
Okay, that was odd. I did take a note of it because it was a longer sort of usually it's a very quick flip, but it was like a freeze and then a flip off. Weird. Yeah, it squunched. And thank you for the heads up on Coke products. Yes, awesome.
As far grade-wise, he did actually pretty good. I looked at his transcripts. His IQ was average, so no intellectual deficits as a result of ADHD. But he was taking medicine, and it seemed like it was working to some degree as long as he took it.
So then the next thing that you say is a history of personality pathology.
Correct.
And can you explain what that means to the jury?
Personality pathology is a broad term used to describe somebody who has had trouble interacting with others, basically.
All right. And are there different types of personality pathology?
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of tell the jury about that?
There are many. I'm not going to be long-winded here.
I don't want you to list every possibility, but are there some specific ones that you believe apply in this case?
So there's cluster A, which are the odd personality types. Yes, he has some of those, but he also has ASD. So per my training, I check the boxes on both and leave the doors open to see actually what happens with it. He's gotten into trouble here and there. He has really big issues with his temper. He's always had that, been physically destructive. So clearly there were issues with antisocial personality pathology, and again, with ASD, because he has issues with controlling his temper, impulsivity, those kind of things. So I checked both of those boxes. He was sensitive to abandonment. Those were, if you remember, he attempted suicide after his girlfriend left him. And that's not unusual when somebody is overly sensitive to abandonment. I'm not minimizing what he was struggling with at the time. And that's falls under a type of personality pathology called borderline. People with borderline pathology also have issues with anger management. They can't control themselves, and their relationships tend to be very unstable. A lot of arguing, instability, those kind of things. So there are many things that showed up in the history and in the records that I reviewed that I was checking both boxes. Some were ASD, and some were also personality pathology.
And did you also mention something called narcissistic personality?
Yes, yes, to some degree. In other words, he had, no offense to him, sometimes maybe an exaggerated opinion of himself, how popular he was, things like that. But not much more than that.
Now, your last finding, I think, is sort of the ultimate finding regarding the guilt portion of the case.
Right.
And what was that?
Basically, as a result of looking at all of his history, he did not have a severe mental disease or defect, and therefore he would know that his conduct was wrong. In other words, he was not insane.
So what experience do you have with dealing with sex offenders, and specifically sexually violent offenders or predators?
In a nutshell, a lot.
Can you just kind of just briefly tell the jury?
I'll keep it brief. So in my fellowship training is where I obtained my experience in evaluating and treating people who had sexual deviants / sex offenders. And that was in Chicago during my fellowship. And then when I returned home to Texas, our state enacted a commitment statute for sexually violent predators, which were the most dangerous repeat sex offenders who were about to be released from prison. And so we had hearings to commit them to treatment. And I've been involved with the state in those hearings for probably the last 25 years or so, hundreds of cases.
And I think that the jury is gonna really respect his opinion. I mean, this isn't a guy that, has an agenda, or anything like that. He's very much he has seen the worst of the worst of the worst, and he's, called a spade and been able to identify them. So if he says Tanner is potentially dangerous, I'm gonna trust him. He doesn't seem prone to over exaggerating. If anything, he seems kind of self-evasive or kind of, humble. He's very humble. He's not aggrandizing. So if anything, he seems like he's kind of guarded or he couches his answers. And, when he says something, he's really thought about all of the options. Again, if the state had to pick from central casting the best psychiatrist to have up there, this is the guy they needed.
That's why I said a lot.
You talk about in your report something called sexual deviance. Can you talk about that related to the defendant?
Okay, so sexual deviance in a broad term is an old classic medical term, and it basically correlates with a term you probably may have heard in this trial called paraphilia. And sexual deviance is basically when somebody has abnormal or pathologic sexual interests. And it largely has to do with individuals who don't give consent. So that's primarily children, adolescents, underage, and women who are sexually assaulted against their will. Or maybe somebody flashes somebody on a corner and the people around they didn't consent to that. So again, consent issues. There are less of a subset where if somebody is overdoing it in sexual activities that interfere with what they're doing the rest of their days, then that could fall under sexual deviance also.
All right, so talking about the evidence and the facts in this case, specifically related to the assault or kidnapping, sexual assault, torture, and murder of Athena Presley and Run Strand, do you see evidence of sexual deviance on the part of the defendant?
Yes.
Can you explain that for the jury?
So when I reviewed the audio recording, it was very clear to me that he abducted her primarily for sex. Because soon after he drove to the secluded spot that he picked out, that's when he started engaging in sex with Athena. It's basically oral sex. He was teaching her how to do it, telling her what to do, threatening her.
Again, he is going to get into a lot of specifics.
Those kind of things. The things that I heard in audio recordings of victims in these cases, read about in investigative reviews of the victims in sexually violent predator hearings, all the same thing. So that's what stood out to me. So that's interest in sexual excitement with children is abnormal. And then the amount of suffering that Athena went through while he was victimizing her, that has some features of sadism. Sadism is where somebody either physically harms somebody or emotionally harms somebody, and it's part of the sexual experience. So there were two areas that caught my eye, looking through that interview and then correlating it with the transcript.
Now, were there other things other than just the facts of this case that indicated paraphilic features to you? As far as more than just the other evidence in this case, besides the kidnapping and murder?
So, what I can to answer your question, interest, abnormal or pathologic sexual interest, they don't just show up all of a sudden like with kids. It's been brewing for some time. So I already knew that something had been going on. I didn't know why it was quiet, but something was going on, and that incident with Athena, it emerged. So that's the only thing I would add with that.
Well, you've also reviewed reports regarding the Tarrant County victims.
Oh, yes, I forgot about those, yes.
And also you heard the testimony just previous to yours. How does that influence you in those areas?
So let's see. So those are, in other words, when there are other victims involved, and these are alleged victims, by the way. These are not convictions.
Again, this just raises him, in my opinion. He is so fair that he is reminding the jury. Again, if any juror was thinking, okay, this is going to be someone hired, by the state to bury Tanner, This man has gone out of his way to remind them that these are alleged. And again, this is a good witness, and he is burying the defense.
Raises for me sexual versatility. So there are numerous outlets for sexual activity that are, and also, involving his wife and other women at the same time. So he has both features, but it's clearly versatility and increased sexual activity. Let's just call it that way. That's what drives the exploration and the versatility.
Can you look at page 4? Do you have your report, Frankie?
I do.
Can you read it's the third, page 4, and it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th full paragraph. And it starts about the third sentence down where it says he acknowledged the prior history of. And if you will continue that through the end of that paragraph. You see what I'm talking about?
Oh, is that the first paragraph, Mr. Horner denied any history?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but I'm not worried about what he denied.
Okay.
I'm more worried about what he admitted to. So if you would start with, he acknowledged the prior history.
Okay. He acknowledged the prior history of sadomasochism and asphyxia. That's basically choking during sex due to other women who encouraged him to participate.
Okay. So he's saying that he has been involved in, what is sadomasochism?
That's where the use of pain, the introduction of pain and humiliation into sexual activity for some individuals heightens sexual gratification. So spanking, hot wax, sometimes people use needles. Let's see, in his case, he reported inflicting cigarette burns during sex. So clearly the experience of
Again, there are people that engage in this kind of activity, but it is consensual. I am not here to police your kinks. I don't care. We operate on a do not ask, do not tell. Unless I ask, you tell me everything kind of thing. Consensual, do whatever the heck you want. Not consensual, go to prison.
pain gets mixed in with sexual pleasure.
And then he also talks about asphyxia. What is asphyxia?
It's choking.
And you understand that he pled guilty to strangling and Athena and asphyxiation.
Yes.
A person that does this in a sexual manner, do they normally do that to cause death?
In a normal manner?
No. If a person is doing these in a legal manner.
In a normal manner or legal manner, asphyxia does heighten sexual pleasure. Let's put it that way. As long as you can keep the person, in other words, you don't knock them out. So I'm not encouraging anyone to do that, but that's basically it in a nutshell.
Okay, so he admitted to you that he had used choking during sex in the past, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regard to other sexual behaviors, did you listen to the testimony outside the presence of the jury of the previous hearing of his former girlfriend and mother of his child?
Yes.
And what, if any, testimony that she gave that influenced you in this area?
What was added, listening to that, reading the testimony that was different in the records, or in other words, added to the records, was she just.
You're liable to object to hearsay.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Okay, I really knew about the issue of dominance. He liked to dominate her. He was rough. She had to set limits at times, but she consented to it until she said stop, and then he did. There was some role playing involved as well. What they did participate in is him playing that as if he was her father, her daddy, and she was his little girl or princess. And so they used to role play like that as a part of their sexual activity. There were ropes. She was not too excited about that and didn't want to participate. He had talked with her about hog tying her. She said no, those kind of things. So clearly he has an interest in things, but he abided by her refusals and didn't go further, but the interest was still there.
Now, with regard to the way that he talks to her on the video related to this idea of sadism, can you explain, your opinions related to the things that were said by the defendant to Athena Strand during the time between the.
This is going to be incredibly rough testimony. Again, guard your mental health. Go on mute if you have to. Take a step away. But we are getting into some of the reasons that I have encouraged you guys not to read the testimony. It's not good. So again, do be mindful of your mental health. Uh, it just it's gonna get really ugly.
Time that he kidnapped her and the time that he ultimately killed her.
So what I heard were threats. If you scream or if you say anything, I will hurt you. Later is I will kill you. He often called her bitch when she came to, so to say. He was clearly very angry about that. I remember a comment, what part of shut up, don't you get, bitch? Those kind of things. So very degrading towards her after he had nearly beat her and strangled her to death.
Even as she is dying, does he make a statement to her about whether she's given up?
Right. Yes. Like she didn't know when to give up.
The
How could all these other experts listen to this? How could they listen? How could they read this transcript and with a straight face say what they did on the stand? How can they do that? This man is holding back tears. He is trying to be a professional. I just can't. I can't. When I told you guys it's bad, it's really, really bad.
talk about Tanner's reasons. Did he explain to you his reasons for covering the front-facing camera during the interview?
With me, yes.
What did he say to you?
Just basically to cover up his drug use during work.
Now, since you have reviewed the videos, were there times where he was actively preparing and then smoking marijuana on those videos?
Using a vape, yes. A vape pen, yes.
And but did you ever see any evidence of any type of cocaine use at all?
No.
With regard to premeditation, do you have an opinion about whether or not this was a premeditated act? Not necessarily with regard to Athena herself, but with regard to a child on that day?
Based on the evidence, yes, I can answer that.
We object, new approach.
Dr. Randall, you can answer the question as far as, other than just covering the front-facing videos, what other evidence did you review that makes you feel that this could have been a premeditated act?
All right, so the word I use is planning, and that's what I'm looking for in my fellowship training. I remember in the investigative records that he'd gone to the site before he took Athena to the site, and that made sense because in the audio, he's telling her, okay, it's going to get a little bumpy now. So he knew where he was going. I asked him about why did you stop at that spot. He said it was secluded, so he obviously selected that. I talked about grooming earlier. When he changed how he was talking with her to help her calm down, to gain her trust, so to say, cooperation. That's what people who have some sexual deviance do to their victims before they exploit them. That's part of the planning as well. And then obviously walking her through what to do, how to do it, not to yell. That's all part of planning. Okay, according to what he's thinking.
First thing that you said you visited the site. What site are you talking about?
The site where he stopped the FedEx truck, basically.
Where he turned off the engine
Yes, sir.
and sexually assaulted Athena Strand?
Yes,
He had visited that site previously to that?
that's what I recall in the records. Yeah.
And with regard to his, does the fact that planning engaged in this and preparation, does that make it different from somebody that is just overreacting to something that happens in the spur of the moment?
Yes.
In what way?
So again, this per my training in evaluating individuals who are, commit sexual offenses. Most of the time there's planning involved, as opposed to somebody just attacks somebody out of a bush. Okay, that's very impulsive, and that's a very different type of sex offender. Probably more, there's other things going on with that individual. So I'm trying to look for whether planning is present, grooming.
I'm surprised that the defense did not object to the use of the term sex offender. Again, we know how prejudicial that is according to the defense. Now, it wasn't used in connection with Tanner, but do look for that to be something they probably do place on appeal or do put up in their appeal motion.
Those kind of things. That's why listening to the audio visual of the abduction made sense to me, that it was planned.
So I'm going to ask you ultimately, because your findings are laid out in your report, but the one finding that you were not asked to make has to do with the special issues for punishment in this case. Do you have an opinion as whether or not the defendant, that there's a probability of the defendant committing criminal acts of violence in the future that would constitute a continuing threat to society?
Yes.
And can you explain what that opinion is?
Yes, based on the evidence that I have reviewed, it's my opinion that there's a probability Mr. Horner will commit future acts of violence and pose a continuing threat to society.
And is that true whether or not he is incarcerated for the remainder of his life?
Correct.
And can you explain that?
Okay, so not to rehash everything, but I'll just succinctly say he's had issues with controlling himself pretty much all his life for a number of reasons. That got worse as he got older. It culminated in this. Other experts have said he has issues with executive dysfunction, controlling his anger, emotional regulation, and impulsivity. That's all involved in this. So whether he's in prison, I've been in prison quite a number of times just to visit and interview people. It's like a little society, all right? So it doesn't really matter the setting, because he's going to come across in prison more or less people that he would probably come across in society. Because he has a mental health issue history, he's going to go to the clinics. There are techs there. They're almost, at least for me, my experience, most of them are females, techs, nurse practitioners, therapists, and there are female guards, of course. So it's a replica of.
And this is the part that the defense really didn't address. There are going to be females around him. If he thinks he can get away with it, if it's a smaller female and he thinks he has time, is that something he's going to attempt? This is his only, prey now. This is the only time where he might be able to exert control. If he is preyed upon in general population, will he go and try to prey on a female healthcare worker, nurse, therapist, tech? These are important things to consider, because he has shown that given the opportunity to be with someone, weaker than himself, there's a whole different Tanner that comes out.
Our community, but it differs, obviously. The type of people that live there are also very aggressive, threatening. It's stressful, at least from the people I've talked to.
Now, I want to talk to you about incidents specific to you. You said that when you did your interview with the defendant, it was you, the defendant, and 3 guards in this room, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain the situation that happened with regard to when you were questioning the defendant related to whether or not he sexually assaulted Athena Presley Monroe Strand?
Okay. So that was towards the end of the interview, and we'd taken some breaks because he didn't want to answer questions, and that's okay. But he was becoming a little bit more worked up. And this last question, I was looking at the transcript, and he was kind of critiquing me that transcript was the DA had made up, and it had inaccuracies and blah, 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 and he didn't do anything to Athena, et cetera, et cetera. And then I responded to him, I heard everything you told her. And it just stopped him. He was very upset. His stare went right through me. It took me aback because I wasn't expecting that. And then the rest of the interview, I didn't challenge him after that because I could sense his anger.
Was it incongruous with what you had up until that point?
Yeah, as I said, there was some increasing irritability when he refused to talk about certain subjects, and then he would come back and say, I needed a break. That's fine. I understand that. but this one was different.
That is very interesting. It's interesting in the fact that he did not want to be challenged, that he told him that the prosecutor made this up. And notice that he turned anger onto a gentleman that was shorter, older, and again, vulnerable. Had those cards not been in there, yeah, amazing what those defense experts didn't talk about.
That type of anger from him.
Absolutely.
Cross-examination.
Oh, yes.
Defense, read the gosh darn room, you idiots. Could you be any more objectionable than you have already proven yourself to be today? Do you really want to get a smart aleck, smart ass? Really? Oh, yes, definitely. I have so much to tell you. Really, defense?
Dr. Rambula, we had a hearing back in December to discuss your review of the records and your opinions in this case. Is that correct?
Right.
And at that time, you had not evaluated Tanner Horner. So
Right.
you really didn't have a lot of opinions on that date, did you?
Right.
You had the opportunity to review all the records in this case, is that right?
Yes.
The records you reviewed, and I imagine you did a thorough review of the records, right?
Yes. I mean, let me add, there were a lot of Facebook posts, and some of them may have been years ago, and so I just kind of scanned them, for example. But I looked at them all. I just didn't spend a lot of time on some compared to others.
So you scrolled through all 10,000 pages of Facebook records?
I didn't have 10,000 pages. I didn't count the Facebook posts.
I don't give a flippin' flapjack what the hell he put on Facebook. No one gives a good gosh darn, ma'am. Sit the hell down, shut the hell up, and stop making me want to repeal the 19th Amendment.
So I don't know how many there were.
Are these posts that were provided to you from the state?
Yes.
So they didn't provide you the entire 10,000 pages of the Facebook records?
I don't recall that there were 10,000 pages.
What, did he like a bunch of SPCA videos? Did he cry at the Sarah McLachlan videos? I don't care.
Pages of Facebook posts. No.
So the state only provided you the posts that they wanted you to see?
No, not necessarily, because when I'm going through the hard drive, portable hard drive, there may be some elements in the history that I print. I'm old fashioned and I print stuff. And then other pages that I'm not going to print. And I decide that by looking at it. And so if it's just social commentary, things like that, I'm probably not going to print it.
All right, so you also did a thorough review of all the medical records in this case.
Yes.
And the records that you reviewed, I think you said were listed on your report.
Yes, ma'am.
So you looked at his mental health records.
I did.
You looked at his physical health records.
Yes.
You looked at the records from the sheriff's office in Wise County.
Investigative records. Yes, ma'am.
And those investigative records, would that be the records related to the suicide attempt?
You mean the one in the jail? Or?
Yes.
Yes, I saw those records also.
So when we were here back in December, you hadn't evaluated him and you hadn't reviewed all the records. We had another hearing back.
Ma'am, your final penultimate expert didn't write even a report, so don't try to play this Sally, all right?
In April of this year. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
And we asked you a lot of questions about the records you reviewed and about your opinions in the case. And you didn't update your report with any new opinions, did you?
I did not.
Did not issue any supplemental report.
Correct.
And you had over 4 weeks to do that.
Before the hearing, you mean?
It's almost like your expert had 4 weeks to write a report. Oh, kind of tough tits. It sucks, don't it, when people use your playbook against you and better than you and have a competent expert that people like?
From the hearing until now.
That's correct.
But you did amend it because you had some typos in there, right?
Yes.
And we're not going to hold those against you. We all do it. But you had the ability to amend your report.
To add to it, yes, covering the sentencing issues, yes, I could have done that at best, yes.
So you talked about the sources that you used, and I don't see a new list of records that you reviewed on your report.
Correct, because I hadn't received that list yet.
So you mentioned nothing in your report about deposition or the prior testimony of the mother of Tanner's child.
That's actually in the investigative records. I don't remember which law enforcement agency it was, but it was in that.
All right, so when you look at collateral sources, you would agree with me that collateral sources are an important source of information.
They typically are, it just depends.
And if there is an issue with inconsistency or inconclusions or poor historian, just with the person that you're evaluating, if it shows that they are a poor historian, isn't it important to go back and look at collateral sources to try to, either shore up what they're saying or disprove what they're saying?
In the instance where somebody doesn't remember something, then collateral information fills in the hole. If somebody misreports something or they exaggerate it or deny it, then if I obtain collateral information that, let's say, is hypothetically correct, I don't disregard what was told to me initially. In other words, they all coexist.
So let me ask you this. As a forensic psychiatrist, you typically don't administer any testing, do you?
That's correct.
But you do rely upon the reports of people who did administer the testing.
Yes, I do.
And you reviewed all of the reports from our doctors,
I did.
all the reports from our experts, and you had the complete file of the DA. Did you review all 40 hours of the video that was provided to you?
Probably.
How much do you charge an hour?
$3.15 an hour.
Defense, are you still there?
So if your bill is 28,400 divided by 350, that's about 81 hours you put into this case so far?
Up to the time of the billing. I think the last bill was April, so it wouldn't include whatever I've done getting ready for this trial. And
Okay. Go ahead.
I didn't review your experts, which took some time to read also.
So half the time that you spent preparing for this trial was watching the videos?
Most of it, yes, because like you said, it was close to, 30, 40 hours. So that was a long time. The records, no offense, some of them become redundant because they're different agencies and they're all there. And so I don't spend as much time when it's telling me that basically the record is telling me the same thing.
When you found out that Tanner had entered a plea of guilty in this case, that changed the focus of your testimony, is that correct?
I thought it would change the focus, yes, ma'am.
So your original focus, it appears, was to determine whether or not he was insane at the time of the commission of the offense.
Essentially that, or what mental state issues were at the time of the offense.
Are you familiar with the laws regarding the insanity defense in Texas?
I remember the basic verbiage.
So are you aware that in order to present such a defense, the defense would actually have to give the state notice that that was their intent?
Again, you've been trying to use every other word but he was insane. You've claimed that no, he wasn't insane, but he had all these defects which effectively amount to the insanity defense. Again, don't tell me that's not exactly what you were doing in a different name. You were trying to mitigate every bit of agency, every bit of right and wrong and choice that the defendant made. So don't tell me that you weren't putting on an insanity defense when it was tantamount to that. You basically made Tanner sound like he had no agency whatsoever. He couldn't control the demon of, inside his brain, and he just had to do this.
That's been my experience. I'm not a lawyer, but it's been my experience, yes.
So in this particular case, to your knowledge, did the defense give the state notice that they were going to use the insanity defense? Or that we were going to use the insanity defense?
I did not know at the time, but again, this is guilt innocence phase, and so that would infer to me that it could be insanity or something that affected specific intent. I didn't think that was involved in this type of case, but largely just mental health. I followed the judge's order looking at his mental health condition, and that's what I did.
Well, didn't you talk to the state before you came in for the interview and the evaluation?
Just for the meet, that's basically it.
So earlier you testified that Mr. Berry went to San Antonio to meet with you in your office about the case.
Right, I thought you meant a meeting before the evaluation of Mr. Horner, but no, I didn't talk with him about what I was going to do. It's just logistics, like what time, where do I go, those kind of things. The meeting, yes, that's when they retained me.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at. So at the meeting where you were retained, they talked to you about what they wanted from you in this case.
As far as just looking at the records and providing my psychiatric analysis, that's it.
And that discussion took place in 2023, or when did that discussion take place?
February of 2023.
So from February of 2023.
Actually, I take it back. It was probably January of 23.
Okay, so from January of 2023 to February of 2026, you did not have any discussions with the prosecutors about this case and the direction it was going?
No, I met with them another time to go over my findings initially. I hadn't looked at the videos yet because that's a lot of time, and so they knew that. And basically, I was just looking at his mental health condition. I hadn't received the order yet, so I didn't know what the parameters were going to be.
Let's talk about the paraphilic disorders. Sexual deviance is not a diagnosis in the DSM-5, is it?
No.
You just use
Should
that
be.
for your testimony
I use
because
it
of the historical significance of it.
right, because of historically, that's been the term. The DSM is not the Bible, so to say. So if they switch it, that's fine. If you look up like literature searches, etc., loads of research regarding sexual deviance, very limited regarding paraphilia, as an example.
However, you would agree with me that the DSM-5 is a diagnostic tool for mental health evaluations,
Yes, it is.
and that sexual deviance does not appear as a diagnosis in the DSM-5.
It does not. No.
Would you agree with me that most of the people that have an atypical sexual interest do not have a mental disorder?
That do have or do not have?
Do not have a mental disorder?
If they have an atypical sexual interest, or if they don't have one?
You would.
I lost you. Sorry.
Do most people with an atypical sexual interest have a mental disorder as well?
I can't say I've seen a lot of research on that because it's pretty vague. No offense, and gray, but that could be fair.
Vague and gray, no offense. Yes, no, the defense has been vague and lacking gray material in their brains.
I would say that, at least from my experience seeing patients, there's typically something involved, but it's not major, so to say. It's just maybe something that.
What she should have asked is, can a person hypothetically, in your experience, have an unusual sexual predilection and not have any mental health issues?
Happen in their history such that it has some segue to what they are doing as an adult.
Okay, so we'll go back to the original question. You would agree with me that most people with an atypical sexual interest do not have a mental disorder?
I think that, again, there's not much research on it, but from my experience, I think that's fair to say they don't have a major mental disorder.
Because in order to.
He qualified that with major. Again, if your paraphilia is such that it's interfering with your daily life, then you might have impulse control. You might have other. She's trying to get. What she's trying to put out is what I was trying to say about there are adults who do this consensually. It's not my jam, but no kink shaming. She's trying to say that you can be a normal person and engage in age play or role play and have it be consensual, have it be something that is fun for both partners, and doesn't mean you're a gross, disgusting human piece of garbage like the defendant. Yeah, Dark Lotus. It's doing a whole lot of heavy lifting.
To have a paraphilic disorder, the diagnosis would require that that person feel personal distress about their interests and not merely distress from society's.
Wait, so Tanner feels no distress about his aberrant desires. I mean, that kinda goes with it. I mean, he doesn't take personal accountability for nothing.
Disapproval.
That sounds like one of the criteria, right?
And in order to have a diagnosis, that it would require non-consensual engagement.
That's what I talked about, yes.
And so
What do you call Athena? I'm sorry.
if someone is consensual and engages in these activities, that doesn't qualify as a paraphilic disorder, does it?
I agree.
You specifically mentioned that the interview and the testimony of Tanner's, or the mother of Tanner's children. Isn't it true that
Children? I thought he had a child. He reproduced twice? What?
she consented to the behavior that you described?
I remember reading that, yes.
And when she became uncomfortable with anything, she took the initiative and she withdrew that consent, didn't she?
Yes, I spoke about that earlier.
And when that consent was withdrawn, Tanner stopped what he was doing.
Yes, same answer.
So he didn't continue against her will, did he?
No.
Same answer. Same answer.
You mentioned sexual sadism in your direct examination, and you would agree with me that sexual sadism wasn't included in your report, was it, as a diagnosis?
I did not diagnose Tanner with pedophilia or sexual sadism.
And the reason that you did not diagnose it, I believe you had said that there was no diagnosis because of the one-time occurrence.
Correct.
Now, you're talking about the sexual sadism, and you're basing it solely on this offense. You said that you had talked about, the distress that you heard on the video.
So the video was probably the primary source, but it was not sole or by itself. There was other pertinent information. Why I talked about that earlier.
Well, there was no collateral evidence.
Yes, there
sexual
was.
sadism, is there?
No, I didn't. I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to what's in the literature. And again, for my training in this subject matter.
Okay, so I'm going back to this case, not what's in the literature, but in this case, you were basing your decision and your opinion on the sexual sadism on something you could not see.
So one thing is that there are features of sadism, and it was something I did not see because he covered the lens, but I heard it.
Ma'am, you are saying that it wasn't sadistic because no one could see it? Are you insane? Are you clinically and biologically and hitherto forevermore insane?
And at the end of the day, again, you didn't diagnose Tanner with any sort of sexual sadism.
Correct.
You also did not diagnose Tanner with any sort of pedophilic disorder, did you?
Correct.
Because it didn't meet the criteria in the DSM.
Right.
You commented that things like this just don't show up.
Right.
So it sounds to me that you're basing your opinion on if he did it once, he must have done it at some other time without any evidence-based criteria there.
No, not using your verbiage, no.
So let me ask you this. You reviewed all the records, you looked at all the investigative records from the district attorney, from the Texas Rangers, from the FBI, from Wise County Sheriff's Department. In any of the records that you reviewed, you didn't find any evidence of child pornography on any of his devices, did you?
That's correct.
And the things that you spoke about, the spanking, the hot wax, the needles, none of that's illegal, is it?
As long as they both involve consent to it.
You mentioned threesomes. That's not illegal, is it?
No. As long as there's consent between the three.
Asphyxia during sex. That's not illegal, is it? If there's consent?
Correct.
Defense, again, for the love of all that is unholy and goodness and hoodness, read the freaking room. Your defendant is gross. We have transcript. We have audio evidence of what he did. We didn't need to see it because we are not mentally subnormal like you and the defense. We didn't need to see it to be able to figure out what he did to that child. You disgust me.
Role playing. That's not illegal, is it?
All
With
right,
consent,
nope.
no.
We're done with this. I can't deal with the defense.
What
So
records
yes to both. There was
Ugh.
was going on in his life leading up to this? You talked to him about the troubles that he had at home, didn't you?
yes.
And he discussed with you that he was working long hours and that he was working 6 days a week?
Oh, fuck
Yes, we covered-
that. Come on, state.
Or did you just take it at face value and make the assumption?
Oh, are we going to go into tomorrow with this fucking ever? Great. We are probably going to go into tomorrow with Cross. We will watch the rest of this tomorrow. I will put a timestamp.
Ready for this
Oh,
trial. And in patients, there's typically something involved.
where we are. It looks like we are going to get this tomorrow. So we are going to take call it a day. We will start a little early so we can finish this up. Defense, I dislike you so much now. But I will see you guys in the morning for Mornings with Mo, and then we will head right back off. Excuse me. The rails and back into this case. I am just so done with the defense, and it looks like she is drawing this shit out, and I can't. I need to be in a better mood. So I will chat at you guys later. Let me see who is on to send you guys to. Okie dokie. And I will hand you all off to Cat Not Williams. And have a great time. Give my love to her. I'm probably just going to go off of here and eat dinner and then relax. So I will see you guys in a little bit. I'll go ahead and put the streams up for tomorrow, but holy fazoli, what is going on? I will see you guys in the morning.